Let me know when you're ready. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order the October 24th, 2023 meeting of the Southborough Select Board. We have people here for the 6:15 appointment of Thomas Rock as Sergeant for the Police Department. Before we begin, is there anyone here who has a public comment regarding something that's not on the agenda? And we typically keep public comment to no more than 3 minutes. All right, seeing as there are. Well, you're coming up for an appointment, right? Okay.
I have public comment.
Okay. Yep.
DPW superintendent. I just wanted to take a minute to recognize Tim Collins and Bridget Delaney for their quick response and thinking clearly when we had an issue at the transfer station. So just wanted to put that on the record that they did a great job and we're very happy they did.
Thank you very much. And I know what you're referring to there. Okay. Well, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Newell.
Can you guys, okay, you can hear me. Thank you for having us here tonight. I am requesting that the select board appoint Thomas Rock to the position of sergeant within the Southborough Police Department. This appointment will fill the vacant sergeant position that became available when Sergeant Heath Wittes retired from active duty on October 7th of this month. Tom grew up in the towns of Southborough and Westborough, attending school in both towns and ultimately graduating from the Westborough High School. He was first hired by Southborough PD back in 2011 as a full-time officer. He received his bachelor's degree from Westfield State University in 2006 and has completed many hours of valuable professional training. He currently holds many positions within our department to include MassCop Local 167 Union President, Assistant Accreditation Manager, Field Training Officer, SEMLEX SWAT Operator and Firearms Instructor, Lead Firearms and Less Lethal Munitions Instructor, Lead Taser Instructor, Lead Defensive Tactics Instructor, Lead Use of Force Instructor, and I can go on and on. He is also the Active Shooter Events Instructor. Tom placed in one of the top positions after the completion of a full sergeant's promotional process that began over 7 months ago. And his appointment will bring our sergeant staff up to full capacity, again, which is 5 sergeants, which means that there'll be a supervisor on every shift. I ask that you please consider my request and recommendation to appoint Thomas Rock to the position of sergeant. Thank you.
Thank you. We have any questions from the board or comments? Officer Rock, would you like to say anything or?
Say thank you to you all. Family. Very much. And
Okay. It's always a nice occasion here when we have a promotion and we see so many people from the police department and fire department and family members all, working together and supporting you. And you should really take some time it's a special moment, really savor it, and you should be proud of your accomplishment here. So, Kathy?
So you have a darling family. So I hope I don't know if he's going to remember, but I bet she does. But it's always so great again to see everybody here, dressed like they are. These types of meetings where this happens really makes us feel good and makes us enjoy doing what we do. So it sounds like you are well qualified for this. Congratulations. And we are well served for you to be on our police force.
Sam?
Thank you again. Congratulations. It's always a great accomplishment to find a good promotion from within the department. That's, I think, a compliment to you as well as to the department and department leadership to bring people through the process and promote them to officer positions here. So thank you very much.
I offer my congratulations to you and your family.
I'll echo Marguerite's comments. Looks like you got your hands full, which is a very nice thing.
Right. I move that the board appoint Thomas Rock to the position as Sergeant of the Southborough Police Department.
Second.
All those in favor? Right.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. And we're going to have the town clerk, Jim Hegarty, come up to swear Tom in to his new position.
Want to stand there so you can face the camera? Please raise your right hand. I'll read the oath at the end of the very safe pictures. I, Thomas R. Rock, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties incumbent upon me as a sergeant of the Southport Police Department, according to the best of my ability and understanding, agreeably to the rules and regulations of the Southport Police Department, the Constitution and the laws of the United States, the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and under rules, regulations, and bylaws made under authority of the Select Board. So help me God. Congratulations, Sergeant.
And I'd also like to take this opportunity briefly to thank Sergeant Wittes for his longstanding service to the town.
We'll now have Tom's wife, Jackie, come up and pin him. Thank you all very much, and thank you all for coming and showing your support. Thank you. Congratulations, Tom.
Thank you.
Seriously.
Want to sign the employee recognition certificate?
Yeah.
In your pen?
They made it down to Marguerite now.
It is, seriously. I mean, they've had an interesting,
May not want to sit next to me much longer after public, after work.
Which one are you, because of the regional?
No. I'm gonna ask. her.
so I'm gonna give this on down. Marguerite, these are the employee.
John. We're thinking of,
Auditor.
we've got a little 9-minute gap here. We're thinking of moving you up on the agenda. Okay, great. Yeah, gets you home a little earlier.
He's easy.
Okay.
What's happening? Oh, I don't even want to know. There's.
All right,
I think
thanks.
there's two.
Thanks for coming tonight. Basically looking for an update on our progress with the townhouse project and also with the Corderville Hall.
Okay, so John,
Streetlights too, yes.
streetlights too, of course. John Parent, Director of Facilities. Townhouse project is coming out exceptional. Couldn't be happier right now with the crew we have working on it, the management team that's been involved with it. Pointing is pretty much done. The acid wash is complete. We are now in the process of reinstalling the restored window sashes with the bronze weather stripping and the new hardware for lifts and locks. We are going to be basically circling the building with staging starting either this week or next week. That will lead to the stripping of the roof, the installation of the new slate roof. Basically, the new front doors will be installed at that point, and the goal is to have everything wrapped up by Thanksgiving. If everything goes well, we should be done by Thanksgiving. The building's more beautiful than I ever thought it would be, quite honestly, and I can't wait to see it finish this one. Corderville Hall, that project is going exceptional as well. I could not be more pleased with the juniors and seniors that have been working down there. They're diligent, polite beyond any belief. These students are just amazing kids, honestly. They're doing a great job. Their instructor, Wayne Carlson, has been awesome. The electrical crew has come in the last few days. They're looking at what they're going to be doing. So the goal is, again, and Wayne does not see any issue with this, will be done by the end of the school year. So that will be completed at that point. So everything there also going swimmingly. Streetlights, more good news there. We're already about 20% complete, and I am very pleased to say I have not received one single complaint. And usually when you do a conversion, you get complaints for a few months. So the 3000 Kelvin obviously made a difference for people, and it's just, I like when I get to come before you and it's all good news, honestly. So that's what I have going with those three things.
What about do you have an idea when the landscaping after the town? Okay,
The landscaping around the townhouse, we want to keep this very simple. Because again, you have a beautiful building. Let's show off the building. The idea I'm thinking of right now, but I'm going to be working with Chris Leroy, of course, on this, is we want to keep it very simple to the point of maybe some birch trees just in between each double set of windows on the Pilgrim Church side, maybe a little uplighting and some rose bushes kept below the windows in between those. Keep it very simple. Maybe in the back of the building, we put in some butterfly gardens because again, it's very important. Southport takes the green very seriously. So we mix, the butterfly, the green stuff with the more traditional stuff that'll still show off the building. You end up with a beautiful building and we end up with some indigenous stuff and some non-indigenous stuff. It's just the way it goes.
that's the planting would be the spring.
It's going to have to be
Yeah.
spring. Yeah, at this point, it has to be. And again, we'll be replacing some trees in the back island because I did have some people ask me about that, but we will be putting some new trees back in there. They were unfortunately dropping stuff on cars that was damaging some of the clear coat, so they kind of had to go.
Thank you.
No problem.
So, hello, John.
Hello.
Let's just talk about the ARPA piece of this, just to make sure everybody knows you're on track with that. So ARPA is paying for the senior center addition.
Mhm.
We've allocated $400,000 and John thinks their budget looks good. That's going to be done timely, so we're not worried about that being spent when it should. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. So where is this one?
Here it is, right here. right
Yeah, there it is. Okay, so 400,000, what you see in that third column is what's been spent, but John is very confident that this is going to come in timely. So when you say school, you're talking June?
June, yes.
Okay, so June will be there. November here, Thanksgiving here.
Yep.
As far as done. Totally out of nothing to do with you, but it's gonna be nice to see all these projects wrapped up in town, the park, this. St. Mark's Church is supposed to be done in December too, so that scaffolding will come down. So we're really gonna have a, beautiful downtown. So good job as always. Where are the lights installed right now?
I didn't get that exact piece of it. I know they're starting in the more remote areas because they try to save the big stuff to the end from what I understand. And unfortunately, my contact, Bob, he's out for a month on a recovery for an injury. But I am working with someone else. I can try to find that out for you, the exact locations.
If you talk to them, that's fine. I just wondered if you. knew.
Okay.
And then as far as your plans for the plans right here, that sounds great. Sounds simple and easy to maintain and sounds lovely. So
I've got the tricentennial in mind. I want the building to be seen.
good job, good job.
No comment. Great update, and let's keep it rolling.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Marguerite?
It looks great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No particular questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
John, one more thing, when the lights actually, or John, can you let us know?
Oh, absolutely.
So we can start trying to look and see what we're, see if we can measurably see what we're saving as far as electricity
Oh,
goes.
absolutely. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that as we go because the bills should start reducing as we move along.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, thanks. I'm glad we could get you home a little bit earlier. We still got a little time, so maybe is Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to come up?
How's everyone?
Good. Excellent. Feel free to take a seat. Just reintroduce yourself. I think we know who you are from like a week ago, but.
Yes, so my name is Kelly O'Brien. I was born and raised here in Southborough. You guys just appointed me to the building administrator position. And I'm here for the vacant position in the historical commission.
Okay. Will you tell us a little bit about, your interest in serving on the historical commission and I see that Kevin Miller, who's the chair, you've spoken with him, right, about your
Yes.
interests. All right. So you want to just tell us a little bit about, are there particular things that the historical commission is working on right now that are of interest to you?
Well, I think it's important to keep the historical. I can't think of the right word, but.
Character?
Yes, exactly, in Southborough, and I see everything changing, even though it's for the better. I still think having historical buildings and so forth is important. I'm a fourth generation here. A lot of my family members they worked for the town of Southborough as well as grew up here. And so when I saw that open position, I thought it'd be something I'd be interested in and being a part of.
All right. I guess the only question I have for you really has to do with, there's some overlap between the duties of being, the business administrator for the building inspector and some of the things that are within the jurisdiction of the historical commission within the demolition delay bylaw. You're familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay, so how would you plan to approach that? Like, and I just was reviewing the demolition delay bylaw to prepare for night, and it's really the building inspector that undertakes these duties, but you may be in a position where there's correspondence going back and forth between the historical commission and the building inspector about enforcement of the demolition delay bylaw. My own view is I think there's not really a conflict of interest between, doing both things, but I think that I haven't before had a situation where there's someone that has, a town employee position and then with some overlap with a board position that they're also on. So, I mean, I think the historical commission has 6 people, right? So.
I don't remember. They were talking about it last night.
Yeah, I
They
know
were
it
eager to
usually isn't,
have.
but I think this one is, so, I don't know, how would you plan to approach things like that if we're,
Keep it separate.
okay,
You
Yep.
know, the historical commission and my position as the building administrator, separate.
all right. So then, I mean, would you then recuse yourself from things that came from the historical commission that had to do with, for example, the historical commission makes a decision about whether or not a building is or is not preferentially preserved, right?
Yes, I would have to.
Okay.
I feel I would have to.
I think that's the right thing to do, just because I think that as someone who's a resident or kind of a developer who would come in and looking to take out a demolition permit, there could be some discomfort in thinking, oh, all right, I'm dealing with someone in official capacity and it's someone who's also going to be making a policy judgment about whether the building is going to be preferentially preserved or not. So I think you satisfied the concern that I had, and I think that's the absolute right way to approach it.
Just to add on to that, working in my past, I've worked in the medical field a lot in risk management where we've had to deal with attorneys and such as yourself and so forth. You only stick to the facts. You got to keep your personal thoughts out of it. I've done that in life and work, so.
All right, great.
And Andrew, there are 7 members in the commission. There's 1 vacant position, so she would be number 7. in the group.
Oh,
Who's
okay.
gonna fill it?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I guess I was thinking 6. That's because there's 1 vacancy.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions?
A quick one. Have you watched the meetings of the historical commission to sort of see what's going on there previously? Or?
I started watching some of them, but then I get distracted because I try to watch them during my lunch break.
Uh-huh.
So,
Okay, but at least you're somewhat familiar with some of the
Yes.
issues that they've been dealing with. Good.
and I've gone on, there's a website where I can't remember the actual name, where you can look up the historical homes and so forth.
Yep.
I've done a lot of
At
that.
Macros, yes.
I've done a lot of genealogy, so
Good.
I know how to do that research and so I've kind of done a little bit of that.
Good. Well, I heard the meeting. I think they're very eager to have you join. So good. I support the nomination. Thank you.
So I move that we appoint Kelly O'Brien to the Historical Commission for a term to expire June 30, 2026.
Second,
All those in favor? All those opposed?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, so you get an appointment letter and then, Jim Hegarty he was here 10 minutes ago. He can swear you in.
Okay, perfect.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so we are now right after 6:35. So the next matter on the agenda is our public hearing for proposed amendments to the public shade tree policy. And in the packet is the copy of the new proposal. I think that has been reflected a discussion that you had, Sam, with the planning board, and why don't I just let you take it from here? if that's all
Okay.
right with you.
As folks may recall, we've discussed this previously several times. And Al and I were deputized to work with Mimi Luttrell, Lisa Braccio from the Planning Board to come up with modifications to the policy that this board had adopted back in May. It turns out there were some inconsistencies there and some issues that folks were concerned about. So we've had some discussions and have produced the document that's in the packet. The basic changes are two things. One, to clarify the process where there were some inconsistencies in terms of what people needed to do when they had a concern or wanted a tree removed. And again, the issue for most folks is that you've got to be clear in terms of whether the public shade tree is on a scenic road or not. And that drives the permitting process and the approval process in slightly different directions. And secondly, there had been conversation around replacement trees, whether they needed to be native species or not. And that is now clarified in this policy that the trees need to be on the approved tree list, which includes natives and cultivars of those natives. So I think that gives a little more flexibility than we had believed previously. So again, Planning Board has discussed this and has voted to support this version of the policy. I actually sent this to our DPW superintendent and our tree warden designee, Mr. Leroy. And I think Bill has some comments that I think are useful for us to hear. So.
Evening. Thank you. Welcome to the DPW superintendent. So I met with Chris today. I only have the benefit of seeing this recently, so bear with me. The comments I'll offer, go through the document, take the feedback, and generally speaking, I do want to say I'm not accustomed to such a detailed tree policy in the community. I'm not sure that many communities have such a policy.
Is the microphone on?
Test. Is this one working?
Okay, yep, she's
Yeah.
getting the thumbs up now.
Sorry. Start over then, please.
Okay. Bill Cundiff, DPW Superintendent. So I was saying, I haven't had the luxury of reviewing the current policy. Now, that being said, I offer these comments constructively, what's being proposed. But I was saying in a general way that I'm not accustomed to a community having a shade tree policy that goes above and beyond the statute governing scenic roads or shade trees. I think it's well-intentioned. I'm a little concerned that the timeline that might be associated with some of these trees and taking these trees down might get extended to an unreasonable length of time. That's my concern. So as I look at this, under section 1CI, we talk about an imminent hazard, and the tree warden designee will have consultation with the town administrator and the town planner. Now, currently, as a matter of practice, at least for the last 2 years, we've been doing that. I'm not sure what added value you would get other than informing the town administrator and town planner. So in consultation is where I'm going with this. I'm a little confused as to what the benefit that is going to be derived by consulting with them. certainly we're happy to communicate with them and let them know where we have issues with trees, as we do currently. Under section 2C, I think it's 1, perhaps 2, you reference a form. I would suggest you include a copy of the form so we can take a look at that and see what it entails.
Okay.
I think that there is such a form already. That's
Yes.
being used. Yeah,
Yeah, there is.
And forgive me,
that's all right.
Section 3E. It talks about how not to hang tree notices. I would encourage you to let us know what is acceptable for hanging notices. Section 5A. We have a time frame here of October 1st to April 1st to do the tree trimming, cutting and removal. That's very limiting. Typically, tree cutting and removal would occur in other seasons than those listed there. I would encourage you to extend that to summer months when most of the tree work currently gets done.
So are we going to go back to each one of these? Are we just
Yeah,
going to listen?
let's hear and
Yeah, let's-
comment as we go through them. So,
Section 6E. Tree replacements shall be in accordance with the town's tree planting plan. I'm unaware that we have a tree planting plan. I'm not sure.
not yet.
Okay.
We're working, planning
Okay.
board is working on that.
Number 7J. I think that should go to the tree warden, and not the tree warden designee. I think that whole section 7, the tree warden designee is referenced throughout, and
Could I jump in here?
Yep.
At one point, I had the same problem. The tree warden is technically,
correct.
so the tree warden designee is the actual tree warden,
Mr. Leroy.
Mr. Leroy.
Yeah, correct.
So I think that a resident, I mean, up to your point, and I'm sorry to jump in, a resident not familiar with the fact that the select board is actually the tree warden wouldn't have any idea what the tree warden designee was. They would wonder, well, who is actually the tree warden? It should be Chris, but it's.
The issue should be
So-
raised with the tree warden, which is the board. Unless it's changed as part of,
Right.
a future amendment, but this should reflect current status.
Yeah, so to your point, if the document is for a resident and the resident doesn't know the backstory on the fact that the select board is the tree warden, they will find it difficult to follow the policy.
Yeah, and we could certainly, post that clarification with the policy and make people aware of that.
Sorry.
Nope. And then 8 talks about a lot of prohibited things. And again, it falls down to the tree warden designee. And, the enforcement aspect or violation notice aspect of this, I think, is where interpretation of the tree warden designee is may not be in line with what the tree warden's opinion is. So I just want to point out that there might be a difference of opinion on things, and the designee should take direction from the tree warden.
Mhm. Okay. Is that the list?
That's the list.
Okay, let's go back through and talk about a few of these points then. I think some of the underlying issue here is that the select board is the tree warden based on the 1991 special act that created the Department of Public Works. And over the years, it has become clear that at least certainly this board is not eager to be the tree warden. So we are in the process of looking at petitioning the legislature again to update that special act and make it clear that the tree warden resides within the Department of Public Works, and clarify that designee distinction. But we historically have voted to make the designee the point person for most of this activity here. And so that part of the intent here was to clarify that tree warden designee representing the tree warden / select board has the responsibility for doing these things, given that his experience is far more appropriate for these kinds of things than any of us who don't happen to be an arborist. And so that was sort of the overarching intent here. And the goal of this was to actually put those responsibilities on the tree warden designee as opposed to the select board. That's why these things were changed. And so if we missed one or two of those label changes in here, that, in my view, is an oversight. We should fix that. It should be tree warden designee throughout this document, I think. Second, back to what was your first point there? Which section?
So the first point was section 1CI.
Okay. Yeah, imminent hazard. And there has been a lot of discussion about that. And I guess, my theory on that has been that the person who has the best skill set for determining that is the tree warden designee in this case. And the effort has been to try to make sure that that person coordinates, particularly with respect to imminent hazards on scenic roads, with the planning board through the town planner. And so again, I don't know that there's any way to clearly define what is an imminent hazard or not, so that everybody agrees what that is. But
The issue becomes, we have staff that's concerned about identifying an imminent hazard, and they shouldn't have to think along those lines. They should see an imminent hazard, identify it, and deal with it
Yeah.
expeditiously, and not worry that he's misclassifying something or having to go through a process unduly.
Yeah.
Um,
And I agree with that concept. The unfortunate history is that there have been cases where DPW staff have determined that something is an imminent hazard where that was not general agreement outside of DPW on that. And I think some of that prompted the effort to try to clarify this through this policy. I'm not sure there's an easy fix to that. And the effort here was to try to put in a balancing factor in this process and basically see how that works. If it satisfies people, then maybe we come back later and say, yes, we have confidence in the judgment of the tree warden designee, and we don't need that extra protection here. But that's sort of where that came from. And part of the effort to get to the place where the planning board and select board were on the same page with this was that kind of a check and balance in the system. So.
And Sam, there, over the last year, I'm remembering a couple incidents where Chris, there was clearly a problem, either a storm or branch hanging dangerously over a road, and Chris just sent an email with a picture of it, sent it to the whole select board, to Mark, to the planning board, and it was just clear as day, get out there, take care of this. And there was no issue about it. So completely hear the concern that you're expressing, but so far.
Well, let me give you the other example. I think the danger, this is not symmetrical, it's asymmetrical. The danger of not taking down a tree when it should be timely is far outweighed by taking down a tree that might, there have been a discussion on whether it should be or not. An example, I'm looking at you, Al, you know why, is in my neighborhood, in February, that horrible weekend, our neighbor, Lou Ron, had already called that tree in to DPW. I called about it and got told, got to go through the process, and then we had a disaster. The tree came down, didn't get taken down by the town, got taken down, took down about 10 poles. We were without electricity for that whole weekend, that horrible cold weekend. I literally just finished my project to replace my whole HVAC system last week, got the inspection done. It was horrible, 127 houses without electricity. So
On the coldest night of the year.
yes, there were sick people. There was a gentleman that had to be moved from his house because he was so sick. It really was horrible. So I'd much rather weigh on the side of taking it down when you think it needs to be and not debating it and ending up with what happened in this neighborhood.
Yeah, I agree completely with Kathy. If we think that somebody is on a regular basis inappropriately taking down trees, That is a training and a personnel issue. But I had problems with this section to begin with, and I still have problems with it. This is, we hire professionals, and I think we ought to let professionals do their job. Now, if that professional takes liberties, that's a management challenge for you. And, but I can't see having to go through an extended approval process or even an extended notification process, and then worrying and having the tree warden designee worrying as to whether he's going to be second guessed, because we're very good in this community at second guessing. So, you know, I'm not actually crazy about this policy to begin with, as I agree with you completely that this is overkill.
Okay, so just in our, just want to keep, do you have a question about a particular point? Because I think what we were doing is
Yes,
a list of,
I'm agreeing that I think that this emergency clause needs to be reworked and limited.
So you would be in favor of notification, basically?
Yes, notified,
Notification.
but act and notify, not notify and wait, act and notify.
Could I just, Kathy, you were in the middle of a list of comments. I just,
No, I'm done.
okay, I think I would revisit this policy. Historically, it came about because some DPW activities historically had been taking down trees and nobody knew why, and maybe it was a good tree and it wasn't clear. My question in this document is, who is it written for? Because recently we've had activity by a resident in town who took down a tree off a scenic road that was a town tree, and clearly the town had not communicated to the residents that you can't do that, right? So my question is the public tree policy for the DPW or for the public to understand what the nature of these trees is? I think it's good to have oversight on trees because historically there was a problem, but on the other hand, when there's emergency, of course you want to do it. So I think we should take a step back and say, who is this policy for? Who are we educating with it? And what, because we want to protect trees that should not be cut down unnecessarily, but really, if you step back, who is being educated by this policy? And in its current condition, it doesn't seem to be aimed at either the public or the DPW and the planning board and the select board together.
so just in fairness, I think that's not really a question that goes to Bill, it goes
Yeah.
to us.
No, but I mean, I'm just
We
asking
passed
in
this
general.
policy.
No, I mean, I'm not asking Bill. I mean, I think
My intent has been clear that this is aimed at the public. Marguerite. Public needs to know what can be done or not in terms of trees along public ways, whether it's scenic road or otherwise, and that's where a lot of problems have occurred.
Yes, and what I thought was really the kind of the meat of this was actually section 2, this process, this forms that were keeping track of the backlog of trees about which there were resident requests, and then setting, you know, a procedure so that through joint hearings between the planning board and the select board, we would have a way of, you know, not debating 500 trees in a meeting, but just having a recommendation from DPW, someone from the planning board saying, look, here's a list of, you know, 50 trees, 48 of them, no one has any objection to them.
mhm.
And because the process before was not as organized, and this is kind of codifying a process that during the prior board, Lisa Braccio and Mimi from the planning board worked together and started to work fairly well. So I see like 2 is codifying a process that has been working so far. I agree, it's kind of cumbersome. I think part of that is also the fact that we have so many trees that are, so many roads that are designated as scenic roads. But just as a point of reference, we already have a version of this.
Yes. we
tree.
have a
The
policy
point of,
in
and
place.
I applaud Sam for working with the planning board on this, because this is intended to just clarify some of the things that are in our existing policy. So the changes in here are, in my opinion, they're an improvement over the existing policy. We could, debate some of the finer points of this,
Yeah.
but I think that,
But if,
Yeah.
if we don't approve this, then we are left with a policy that is, I think, less effective than this. And I mean, one option is to somehow rescind the existing policy and have no policy, which I think is also.
No, you don't want to
problematic.
do that.
I don't think we should
So,
do that. I
yeah.
think that this is an improvement. I agree. I think the select board has spent a lot of time on trees and you could definitely make a case too much time. So I am hoping that we're working toward removing ourselves from being the tree warden with the PWPB reorganization, but that's to come.
Yep.
Until now, I just want to get this done. We've got so much on our list. I don't want to spend any more time on this policy and I don't want to spend any more time on trees for now. We've done a lot of work on trees. I love trees too, but we've got a lot of things to do. So Bill, it's not perfect. We agree. But we've spent a lot of time on this. We passed it in May because Lisa Braccio had led the effort select board to truly try to improve our protection of the public shade trees. And we wanted to get this passed before she left the board. So we did it. We knew there's flaws in it. So this does improve that. Planning board, it's my understanding, has approved this, right? With what we're looking tonight.
That's correct.
right?
Yes.
So I'm okay approving this, even though it's clearly flawed. And you're never going to hear Al and I stop talking about what happened in our neighborhood as far as that tree not coming down when it should have. But this is going in the right direction. So let's just be done with it for now, and know that we've got a policy and we can
Yeah,
bring it back up. And when we have a real tree warden, which I hope is in the future, they can take this and, suggest more changes, work with you to improve it further.
And I'm certainly open to modification of this as it goes along as well, frankly. Again, I'm far less comfortable having the existing policy in place without modification. Understood. Versus at least marginally improved policy, even with some flaws.
Yep.
I think this is much clearer than the other one, and I think it shows a lot of good work, and I will support it. And I also hope that when we're no longer the tree warden, life will be a lot easier for the DPW. So I hold that out as future hope.
Well, practically speaking, I think life is already easier for the DPW with this policy in place, in the sense that tree warden designee actually is now the point person for a lot of things that have been on our plate.
And it's done a great job too, trying to
Yes.
comply with this and,
Yeah, Chris,
Everything.
every time that some of us have gone around for inspections, we've been impressed with Chris's ability to figure out, to figure out what should be done. And I've seen him make great efforts to save trees as opposed to cutting trees down. So I think that's an improvement over days of yore as well, frankly. So I applaud the effort he's put on.
okay,
Anything
and
else?
I agree that I would like to get this, and I think we are going to get this wrapped up tonight. There is one tweak I would like to make, if that's all right. Just it's wording that's so vague, it bothers me.
Okay.
But I mean, maybe we should. Do you have other comments on any other sections?
No, I just want to underline the date range too. I think, if you could broaden that, that would be helpful.
That one actually came strongly from the planning board in terms of nesting season for birds and so forth in trees to not get in the way of that cycle. So Ms. Luttrell is here. I'd be interested in any thoughts she has in terms of broadening that, because that was, again, strong input from the planning board.
What, so when you come to a microphone, please.
Yeah.
That the fall time is better for the healthy tree than the tree that's. It reduces the chances of disease, for the tree and as well as the, nesting season. Do I need to say that again?
Please, yes.
Mimi Latrell, Chair of the Planning Board. That season was chosen and is recommended by arborists because trees are dormant during that time, and trimming is best when trees are dormant for the health of the tree. It reduces the chance of diseases, and it also protects birds, and thus during nesting season. But if a tree is coming down, well, I'll leave it
It's a
at
moot
that.
point if
Shouldn't
it's
matter.
coming down. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's coming down, right?
What about a limb that's an imminent hazard as opposed to the whole tree?
Well, so an imminent hazard is different. An imminent hazard comes down because it's an imminent hazard.
So if we were going to try to broaden that October through April time period, I mean, is there one end to that that's more sensitive than the other? We might think about extending a little bit.
Well, on the fall side, I would think, not the spring side.
So you could,
But if we're looking to, preserve and maintain the health of our trees, then
yeah,
But Mr. Condon, what is your experience with the traditional tree trimming times?
The tree trimming that I'm familiar with usually occurs throughout the summer into the fall. And there's a number of reasons for that. We get concerned about safety in the winter months with the trees freezing and becoming brittle. We are also, I notice, I don't disagree with you that trimming and cutting might be a beneficial period to do during this time frame. But removal, I would think, wouldn't have that same issue with the health of a tree because we're removing it.
Right.
So
As far as I'm concerned, the safety of our employees trumps, pardon the use of the word, the considerations of tree health or wildlife. I agree with you. I mean, I've done tree work in the winter, and it's everything is slower, more expensive, and more hazardous in the winter. And I don't want to put our employees at risk.
Bill, what would you suggest if you were writing this as far as the period goes?
I would suggest going with what the statute requires, which they don't define a period. But I respect the fact that they have concerns. So,
would it help if we basically did trimming limited to these periods and removal could happen
that would help.
anytime? Maybe would that work?
So
If it's
I
being
think there's
removed?
two comments here that Al, you're alerting to that we could do, which is one on 1C, little I, where it currently says in consultation with the town administrator and the town planner, we could say with notification to the town administrator and the town planner. And then on 5A, to capture what you were saying, Sam, are you suggesting that you say unless a tree to be trimmed poses a imminent hazard, all such tree trimming shall occur in late fall through winter?
That's what I was questioning. Yeah. And so if it's going to be removed, doing it in
doesn't
these
matter.
months,
Yeah.
the health of the tree is not an issue at that point. If it's basically meets the qualifications for removal, which typically would be a dead tree.
Still habitat.
As a matter, still habitat there, but provide more flexibility. I mean, habitat I think of, trees with leaves as being more flexible or supportive of habitat versus a dead tree. I mean, you got insects and whatever, I guess, in those trees. But if it's coming down next season anyway, another year, in my view, not as critical maybe, but so, I mean, any thoughts on?
I like the idea of the notification instead of
Yeah.
consultation, and I like the idea of carving out the cutting and letting
Yeah,
And there's one last thing which I was going to suggest, which is on 6B.
the removal,
So-
sorry.
Yeah, the first line of this has always bothered me, the part that says public shade trees so removed that either do not serve a public purpose or removed without complying with the public hearing process. I've never really understood. I don't think the grammar is good, and yeah, public purpose is extremely vague. It's more straightforward to just say if a public shade tree is removed without complying with the public hearing process laid out in this policy, comma, it shall be replaced, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I agree with that too.
Simplify it.
Ms.
Well,
Latrell?
Well, sometimes it hasn't happened thus far, but a tree could be approved for removal for a homeowner for some specific purpose that's not necessarily serving the public. And if,
Yeah,
and
and
if
it's-
if we approve that to be removed, it should be compensated.
I mean, ultimately, this is. I mean, if we determine that it's okay to be removed, isn't there inherent in that there's some public purpose in doing so?
Well,
Not
but the
necessarily.
point though is it who pays for replacement here? In other words, if the tree doesn't serve a public purpose, but it's removed, as Ms. Latrell suggests, at the request of a homeowner, then the goal of this section 6 was that the homeowner should pay for that replacement.
I don't think that sentence makes sense.
No, I'm
It
not
says
clear what it-
either do not serve. If it doesn't serve a public purpose, then why are we going to penalize someone? I think it should just come out. I agree. And simplify that sentence with the last part of it. So public shade trees that were removed without compliance sounds much better than,
And maybe
Yeah.
section A actually clarifies the who pays piece for us. I think that, in my mind, section A makes it clear that if someone requests and it's approved, then again, it's at the applicant's expense to replace.
My question on that is, does it specify where the tree is to be planted, where the replacement?
No, but that's at the, again, at the discretion of the town.
It doesn't. That's why I suggested. Okay.
So the sentence, it doesn't make sense. It says do not serve a public purpose. It's not written right. Sorry, it's not written right. So let's just get rid of that part of it.
So
Ms. Latrell, any other comment on that one?
I disagree.
Mimi, it should say either serves a public purpose. It says do not. If it doesn't serve a public purpose, then why do you care?
Well, we care that it needs to be replaced.
But section A says that it's going to be replaced at the applicant's expense. I think. at
If
least-
you want the public to understand this, that sentence needs to be
Yeah.
simplified.
So here's where to maybe move towards a conclusion of the discussion. I think we should finalize the revisions to this policy tonight. And, my suggestion is we do so based on this draft on 1CI, change in consultation with to instead with notification to the town administrator and the town planner.
Mhm.
And then in 5A, cut it back, no pun intended, to be unless a tree to be trimmed poses an imminent hazard, all such tree trimming shall occur in late fall, et cetera.
All such tree trimming, yeah, period, no cutting and removal.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And then 6B, if a public shade tree is removed without complying with the public hearing process laid out on this policy, it shall be replaced, et cetera, et cetera. Does that sound good?
That clarifies
Okay.
section 6, certainly.
Are there any other
Okay.
comments on that? All right. You want to make a motion?
I'll
I'll take a stab at it.
go ahead.
Okay, I move that the select board approve the revisions to the public shade tree policy that are in our packet with the 3 modifications that I just suggested.
Second,
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed.
Okay.
So then, Sam, would you be willing to take care of
yes.
implementing
I'll
those?
I'll make the
Then-
changes,
Yes,
circulate. Oh,
Sorry, I want to record it. I voted no. I'm not going to support a policy that endangers our employees.
Okay, so the vote was 4-1.
Well, one, okay.
All right, I move that we close the public hearing regarding the proposed amendments to the public shade tree policy.
Second,
All those in favor? All right. Bill, I think you're coming up next.
Good evening, Bill Cundy.
Okay.
Yep. So I guess we go through a project update on occasion. So what I'd like to do is just quickly go through the projects. If you have questions on anything, feel free to jump in. First project I'll mention is St. Mark's Park. As you know, we did go out to bid recently for St. Mark's Park. We have a budget of $250,000. Belco of Manchester, New Hampshire bid $236,340. After a reference check recommendation, the Board of Selectmen awarded them the contract. We're in the process of finalizing the agreement, getting a schedule from them and a schedule of values for the project. Once we finalize the contract documents, we'll issue a notice to proceed. We expect this project will be completed by the end of April. St. Mark's Road. This is part of a larger project, Main Street and some peripheral roads that we contracted with Perkins. As you know, they did put the binder paving down, so it is passable now. We milled the intersection of St. Mark, actually, they were supposed to mill the intersection of St. Mark's at the Town Hall driveway today, but I don't think they did that. Lazaro Paving is supposed to place the top coat of paving within a few weeks. That's the best schedule I can give you. The signs are done, the street signs are done. The project total, again, not just for this, but for all the various roads, 2.6 million. The contractors spent 2.1 million to date, and we have about 590,000 left under contract. Main Street Tip Project. That's a Mass DOT project. We've generated a punch list and have shared that with our engineer VHB and provided that to the state. I have not seen or heard from Mass DOT since I've been here. I do plan on calling the engineer associated with them to make sure they got the copy of the punch list, introduce myself and that sort of thing. But generally speaking, they're substantially complete. I know there's a number of issues that are still outstanding, and we do plan on bringing that up. But I want to underscore the fact that this is a state project, so we can say what we need to say. They can listen, they don't have to listen, but it's their project. Newton Street. Newport Construction was awarded a contract. As you may know, they have milled the road. Tomorrow, they're going to start raising the structures on Newton Street. Paving will occur in the next week or so. As part of that project, we had an ad alternate for Stockwell and Fitzgerald sidewalks. As you know, there's concerns about the integrity of the trees out in that neighborhood. So I did ask the contractor to pursue and submit proposed change orders utilizing a tree company. I think they're going to use Bartlett and basically give us their best prognosis for making sure as many trees survive a sidewalk replacement project as possible. So there may be a change order with a little additional cost. Porterville Road. This is a conundrum to me. So I have 25% drawings. My understanding is VHB is working on environmental permitting. They billed about 80% of their contract value. So I need to drill down and figure out what's going on with that project.
VHB has.
Yes. I've been asked to talk about the next normal paving, which are our routine maintenance paving project, and I'm reluctant to kind of identify a project at this point. As you may know, we have a number of things going on at the same time. We have a draft pavement management plan that's
being worked on. It's being finalized. Right. It's about 70% complete. I do have some input to Beta for that plan. Likewise, we have a concurrent, but not as part of the same contract, sidewalks and ramp evaluation project going on, which is just starting out. That's 7,500 that they've incurred for costs, and it's a $50,000 contract, so that's about 15%. The timeline on that is, I'm being told they're going to do a field assessment. They're targeting January and February, but if snow flies, they won't be able to do a field assessment. So we're looking at next spring, more likely than not. I will push them to try to get a little more aggressive on the schedule. Something that hasn't been discussed much, but I need to raise because we have a number of issues with existing drain pipes and culvert pipes. It seems in a number of locations, we're getting the corrugated metal pipes failing around town in various locations. And I'm not sure what kind of evaluation or forethought was done as we move forward with our paving projects. We want to make sure as we proceed with paving projects that we look at the utilities before we do a paving project, so that we can basically include the whole scope of work. So we're not cutting into the road to repair problems. That being said, so back to the normal paving project, I think we need to take all of that information and compile it and put it into one document so that we can proceed in a logical way on recommendations, knowing the full scope and cost of the next paving project. Generally speaking, my experience has been, we would do underground utilities on year one. We'd also do design on year one. Year two, we would do the physical constructions. That would actually we would do drainage, then the paving. We'd let the trenches settle for a year before we actually do the paving. As I mentioned, culvert issues. We've got a major issue on Willow Street. If you haven't driven it, I would encourage you to. We have 3 steel plates over the road because it's collapsing over these 2, and they're relatively small culverts, 36-inch and a 30-inch culvert. We have a gas line crossing and we have a sewer line crossing at that location, which makes it more complicated. These culverts are very deep. The engineering proposal for the design and permitting to get these culverts, this culvert fixed, is $192,000. Likewise, Northborough Road, we have a culvert that has an issue that we have at, my understanding is this sinkhole's been going on for a while, so we've just been filling.
So a different one than the one which was just,
Correct.
okay.
This is after you go over the railroad tracks. You take the left and then it's maybe 300 feet. Okay, on the left. We have a barrel there, so you can actually go see that too.
Well, we're closer to Marlboro there. Okay,
Right.
yeah.
So Northborough Road, this again is a deep culvert. It's got several streams that are merging into one location, and we have an ongoing sinkhole that, you know, needs to get dealt with at some point. The engineering proposal for that one is $115,000. John Street, when I first started here, we had a sinkhole in John Street. Now, this is a very steep hill, and we basically had to dig up the sinkhole to see what was going on, and it was a failing culvert pipe. The entire bottom of the pipe is rotted out. It's a corrugated metal pipe. It's rotted. We do need to replace that pipe. My estimate is about $100,000 for the physical work to do that. That's something we can, I don't think we have the capabilities in-house to do it, so we'll have to bid it out, but you know, certainly we could design it and put it out to bid in-house.
So 192 and 115 are design,
Design,
Right.
and then the 100 is to fix it.
correct,
For the third one.
correct. We did submit a grant application for accelerating climate resilience. It was only $85,000 to pay for a portion of the Willow Street Northborough Road. We should hear from that soon. Chapter 90 funds, we have approximately 1.7 million accessible warrant article for roads projects. We have about 913,000 minus the Lazaro work, which is about another 442,000 plus extras. We have been notified by the DEP about paperwork issue with the landfill on Parkerville Road. It seems they can't locate a copy of what's called a certified CQA, certified qualifications analysis. And basically that's all the analytical testing that should have occurred during the capping of the landfill years ago, 30 years ago. And apparently we had a surprise inspection the other day. The engineer that came from the DEP met with me and said, hey, we don't have record of the CQA documents. And as a result, we don't have a record of the DEP certification of the closure of the landfill. So we are in the process of going through the Board of Health's files, our files, and I guess Rec Department might have some files also.
This is the landfill in front of Neary.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm. That, in fact, REC has a project they're working on there.
that's
so
right.
Need to make sure that all the paperwork is squared away with that.
They don't have it yet.
Oh, they're working on a project there. Yeah. Yeah. Right, yeah, yeah, but it's still in the pipeline. I mean, what happens if one can't find that paperwork?
We will have to get our consultants to work with the DEP to basically make an argument to them that, you know, for years we've operated under this mode, knowing that it's been capped. So basically make an argument along those lines.
Have we done
There's
testing
a prima facie evidence
during
that
this
it's been
time?
capped. Yeah,
We've got testing that has shown that there's not a problem, or,
we do.
okay,
Years of
so,
testing
yeah.
that would support that.
okay. So there's some reasonable chance that that could be worked out.
It could be, but we got to go through the process.
I'm sorry, are you finished?
Yep.
Okay, first off, thank you. That was an excellent report. I'm feeling much better about the way the DPW is being managed. In addition to the $236,340 for the work on the St. Mark's Park, are there other expenditures related to that in terms of design or other expenses that can be associated with that park in particular?
The only other one that I'm aware of is proposed contract amendment from the designer VHB. Want to say it was for 19,000, Mark, do you recall? 17,000, 19,000, something like that. And, you know, I've been going back and forth with them because, you know, I'm drilling down. I'm not quite satisfied with what the fee is versus the scope that they've given. So I'm working with them on it.
And I believe there are other expenses that have been incurred
One.
since.
So stay on this for a second, because this is important. We can't go over 250
I understand.
between VHB and between Belco, right?
Understand.
We're going to talk about the appraisal in a second. Last time, Mark, we talked about VHB, Greg Russell had said he had some money that hadn't been used for the previous contract. So it was very fuzzy what he was going to charge for doing the work he's done recently, which is doing the first bid and then doing the second bid. So I'd push back real hard because we've got to keep those two in 250. He's just got to understand that. Then the other thing that we have at least temporarily put into that article is the cost of the appraisals that were required for the actual land swap, which was a different article at town meeting. We had two different articles. One was for the park 250 and one was to approve the land swap. Mark put it there just temporarily till we saw how this turned out. So that I believe is probably legitimately movable. And I think we may have to do ARPA money tonight, but that probably is going to have to come out to if Greg's fee is going to be anywhere near 19, that appraisal is going to have to come out of there.
How much was the appraisal?
I don't know, Mark, what was it?
I'd have to look it
A
up.
few thousand,
2,000.
7, 8, 9, something like
Okay.
that.
But I'm not done negotiating with
Okay.
VHB.
I'm disappointed, and I'll discuss that in more detail in a minute.
What are you disappointed with, Al?
I stood on the floor of town meeting and said 250.
That's right. And we're trying,
I- I
tonight
stood up-
we're saying we're not going over 250. So I don't know what you're disappointed in. He's going to go back to Greg and we're going to get this under 250.
That included the appraisal. I'm
No, it
sorry.
didn't.
I stood on the floor. I put my reputation on the line.
No, it didn't. We didn't even know we were going to have to do an appraisal until later. And when we checked and realized that we have to appraisal, we had no idea we had to do an appraisal. So that's not true. Remember with Belco, we've got a add-on with the wall, so we may have to cut back on some of the add-on to get this under 250, but we are going to come in under 250 because that's exactly what we told town meeting. And I disagree that the appraisal was part of that. It absolutely wasn't even discussed. We didn't even know we had to do an appraisal, and that appraisal involved the land swap, not building the park.
And we're not going to get to a further back and forth on this. We're just on the, there's another item I wanted to mention about this that's also on the agenda, which is the town center old burial ground. So right now, the condition of the town common, right, you see some of the railings which are falling apart and some of the iron has kind of warped. And in the old burial ground, there's some kind of historical enclosures which have fallen apart. And when the select board met last summer, one of our goals for this year was to have a project which kind of follows up on the St. Mark's Park project that cleans all that up, makes it look nicer, and makes the center of town in good condition for the tricentennial coming up in 2027. I was thinking that as kind of the next step, we could have a representative of the select board and the historical commission to maybe work with you on kind of a scope of a project that would come back to the select board for just a sense of how you think we would go about pricing, what would be some kind of ballpark, numbers you would anticipate, and then we can make an informed decision about whether it's something that's worth pursuing or not.
Sure.
All right, okay,
Happy to help.
Could I add a comment to that?
absolutely.
As folks know, I'm a member of the Board of Commissioners of Trust Funds. One of those trust funds is actually for cemetery maintenance. And I certainly can't speak for the board, but it's been my proposal to the board that we think about using some of that money for taking care of some of the issues, not only with the rural cemetery, but old burial ground. And we're actually working with the town council to confirm that we can use that money for those purposes. And if it turns out that we can, I think that gives us some financial flexibility to do some things that a number of people have expressed concern about, including headstones and tree issues in the old burial ground particularly. And the rural cemetery, I think, has some stone wall problem and some other things that I think most people feel could use some upkeeping. So again, I think that's in process, and we need sufficient votes in the Board of Commissioners of Trust Funds, but I will continue to propose that and let folks know as that develops. So I think that.
But as a next
Very helpful.
step, do you think the
Yep.
idea of we have someone from the historical commission,
Yes,
someone from the
yes.
select board, work with Builder?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
And again, the budget is a key factor in there. And if we actually can find some funding outside of the normal town budget process, I think that would allow us to do some useful things there. So I will continue to push that.
And do we have any maybe volunteers to be from the select board representative to
I would volunteer unless somebody else really wants to do
Marguerite,
it.
you'd be
Marguerite,
interested?
wanna do it? Go for it. Go for it.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, I've got plenty, so
You do.
go for it.
I'm glad to volunteer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, so that basically accomplished what I was looking to do under Roman numeral 6B. So I'm gonna check that off.
Can we go back to Bill's list?
Of course.
And Bill, if you're not ready to talk about this one, because I dropped this one on you at the last minute, because I'd forgotten about it. But I do want to go back to the park and reiterate that we do not want to spend one penny more than $250,000 on the cost of building the park, including the design fees. That was definitely part of it. The design was. Okay. CSX crossings. So that was part of our downtown road project, but we couldn't get it done when we did our part of the town road project because CSX controls the timing. So the last time Ms. Galligan checked with them, they, it still hadn't percolated up on their list yet. It sounds like it's quite a bureaucracy to have to talk to. So it wasn't clear when they were going to be ready. We've got to pay for it. So, the clock's ticking, inflation is ticking. Last time she had an estimate for it that she presented select board was between $500,000 and $600,000 to do.
600, yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be nice to figure out what's going on there so that they don't pop in and do it and, send us a bill for $1 million. That's part of the, sounds like you're about $2.2 million of road money between Chapter 90 and the warrant stuff. So it sounds like you got the money to do it, but it'd be nice to really get that piece of it done too.
What my understanding is, in speaking with a local resident, that we should talk to our state representative and our senator and ask them for some assistance to get things moving.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yep.
Okay.
And Kathy, could I add Central Street to that topic as well? And that I've got.
I'd put that one on there too. I just don't know who pays for Central Street.
Yeah.
We definitely pay for Main Street.
There are grants available to CSX to do this type of,
Crossings, yeah.
but we do need to get our state reps involved.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do that.
And they seem willing to help generally, so that'd be great.
So Bill, are you looking for select board to find at least $322,000 to do the 3 culverts? I've subtracted the 85 to be the
I've
optimist I
submitted
am.
it for capital. I still plan on submitting for other grants that I'm aware of, but yes, it's out there. We do need to deal with it.
And for the culverts, they all sound different, but they all are. Would you save money if you did them all with?
No.
Okay, they're totally different. Okay,
There's no benefit. You're
Okay,
not gonna see a
understood.
cost benefit. I want to underline, this is just for design, which is staggering to me, but
So the true cost is really going to be large.
correct.
of these culverts.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's just talking about the design for 192, 115.
Is there anything else going on with these that we could suggest somebody else should help pay for some of it? Nobody else did anything wrong to create the problem necessarily.
Beavers did
Yeah.
one.
Okay.
I don't know how much, how much luck we'll have.
They don't have very
Yeah.
deep pockets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
send them a bill.
But the sewer line, for example, over on Willow Street wasn't installed incorrectly or whatever, so you
No,
can't go back
no,
to somebody.
that was a result of beavers, believe it or not. They
Okay.
got into the, under the road. They were
Is,
under. the-
Ellen,
Jeez.
Marius.
Would
That road is heavily trafficked. It's a hypotenuse to get to Route 9 going west. So that's all, and that's where all the neck, vehicles go and park. So it gets a lot of
It's cut
traffic.
through, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the, if it's replaced, is it better materials than was used previously? Or how long will the replacement last before
Yes,
that
the-
too collapses?
We would have to comply with culvert design standards, which are very rigorous, and that's part of why you're seeing such a high engineering fee.
Because they previously were not.
Correct.
How old are these culverts mostly? Just.
And I saw for Willow Street, the plan was dated in 65. I couldn't tell you on Northborough Road.
Thank you. That's good to know.
A related question is, sounds like these corrugated iron pipes are starting to fail. I mean, what do we replace them with? And is there anything that we can do to get ahead of that other than to keep paying money and digging?
Ideally, I like to use reinforced concrete, but there's a cost with that. So more likely than not, we'll be going with high density polyethylene plastic, basically.
Okay. But we don't really have any good way, I assume, of assessing sort of what's under the ground there now and
We don't
it's
have
likely
a
to fail.
camera.
yeah.
It would be great if we could camera inspect the lines. And, that's something that I brought up with our insurance company because I know Maya will contribute some of the cost towards a camera.
Oh,
So, I'll keep investigating that though.
okay, that could be interesting. So maybe some grants there, yeah, too. Okay. You didn't do an inspection of all this before you took the job, huh? So what am I buying here?
Willow Street something.
All right, well, if there's nothing further, thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
Okay, thank you very much.
So the next matter on the agenda is consideration of appointing Ellen Maria to the Community Preservation Committee. I think
She was in the audience. Yes.
Okay.
There she is.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are all of you?
Good. Well, thank you for applying for looks like you applied for a couple different positions, and after kind of kicking the tires, seemed like the Community Preservation Committee would be a good fit, which based on the information you put in your form, looks like it would be a good fit. And Ben Smith thinks you would be a good fit as well. So with that in mind, would you like to just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and why you're interested in serving on the Community Preservation Committee?
Sure, thank you. So I've been a resident of Southborough for about 3 years. I live here with my husband and my 3 young children, and work as a consultant with nonprofits, foundations, and government agencies to kind of help with their research, evaluation, and public policy work. And my background in particular is in affordable housing, which is what kind of drew me to some of the housing related committees. And after talking to Ben Smith, as you mentioned, community preservation was one that was particularly interesting to me and one I thought would be a good match to my background in terms of the focus on not only housing, but of course, historical preservation, open space and recreation, which I think are some of the main things that drew my family to Southborough, and I think is true for many families as well. And so I thought this would be a good opportunity to become more involved in the town and give back a little bit.
I think it's great that you've looking to volunteer for town boards and committees. So, you know, soon after you've moved into town, I know I did something very similar about 10 years ago. And we have a crisis in terms of affordable housing, and you know, great article about that in the front page of the Sunday Boston Globe. Yeah, the Boston's they had a spotlight team about, they focused on Milton and the extraordinary housing price increases and driving people who lived in the town for many generations out of the town. So I think it's excellent to have someone that has an interest in affordable housing serving on the CPC. And, you know, one of the goals of the select board for this year is we want to try to use CPA money that we haven't really made effective use of housing money from even just like 10 years ago. So we're working to try to improve some of our processes, so we'll make more effective use of that. So I look forward to supporting your appointment.
Thank you.
Kathy?
So I just want to say hello and reiterate that this select board is very serious about trying to do something about the affordable housing stock in this town. And it sounds like you've got a great background. So this is really exciting as far as what you've done, what you can bring to this discussion. So we're very glad to have you apply for this.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for applying. Have you had a chance to watch any of the CPC meetings? So you got a feel for what's going on with them?
Yes, I've watched a few of the meetings, and then I'm trying at least read the minutes afterwards to just, like you said, kind of stay on top of which issues are coming before the committee, the work that's being done.
Great. Well, this is actually one of the committees that I've always viewed as one of the best jobs in town, in the sense that these folks actually give away a lot of money each year, and they've gone through the town meeting process. So in fact, very unusual that you have resources here that you can approve projects for in a fairly flexible way. So I think that's a great place to be, and I certainly am glad to support your appointment here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marguerite?
thank you for volunteering. I'm looking at you on Sam's laptop, so I am making eye contact. We, we are at the town's at a very interesting point, maybe for the last 4 or 5 years in terms of housing stock and a lot of other things. So thank you for volunteering.
Thank you.
As chair of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, I want to thank you as well. I think we may have other ways that we can avail ourselves of your services, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
I move that the board appoint Ellen Maria to the Community Preservation Committee for a term to expire June 30, 2026.
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
congratulations.
congratulations. And as next steps, you should be getting an appointment letter from the townhouse. And at some point, please make sure to go see Jim Hegarty, who's physically in front of us right now. Not sure you can see him. You just raise his hand. Just go see the town clerk's office and get sworn in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we're going to turn to the chair's report. There's one item that I'm going to mention that just happened yesterday, so it didn't make it onto the agenda, but Mark and I received a notice yesterday from Steve Wynot announcing that he has made the difficult decision to resign as the Veterans Grave Officer. And it looked like he was looking to resign effective immediately as of the time he sent his letter. It's, I think it's unfortunate. Steve is I thought a very, very dedicated public servant who feels very passionately about veterans and the old burial ground. And, he mentioned he feels that he does not have the same enthusiasm for the job going forward that he did in the past. So I didn't try to change his mind. It looked like he had already made up his mind. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that, and that we'll then need to find a new Veterans Grave Officer. He will be, presiding over the Veterans Day ceremonies coming up. And he's asked me to speak on behalf of the select board at the Veterans Day ceremonies, as I did last year, and I will plan to do that. And the next chair's report we have.
Andrew?
Yes.
Could I weigh in on that one? I think there are a few volunteers in town who have exceeded Steve's dedication and efforts in volunteer position over a long period of time. So I think that, he may not have had a lot of visibility in the community generally, but it's people like Steve who made a lot of these activities work as they need to on volunteer bases. And I'm disappointed to lose his services, but he's certainly paid his dues in many ways over in that process. So appreciate his long-term.
And I think you speak for all of us when you say that, but also one way that he has been very visible. I think you're right in that the average person may not know who the Veterans Grave Officer is, but it's a position where he's dedicated to recognizing the graves in the old burial ground and the rural cemetery of veterans who are buried in Southborough cemeteries. But beyond that, he's also for many, many years presided over the Veterans Day ceremonies, which are very, anyone who's been to those feels moved by the end of it, and also our Memorial Day services. So, something will be lost here from the town by him deciding to step down from that position.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
I'd like to suggest that we refuse to accept his resignation. He's been fantastic. He's given so much to this town. And he's worked for years, and I can't see losing him. He's too valuable a member of the community.
Well, we're all volunteers, right? you know, you saw his letter and, you know, at a certain point, he's just made his decision. So you can feel free to reach out to him directly as well, but, someone decided to resign. They've decided to resign.
Yeah.
All right, so the next item I'm going to talk about is the employee recognition breakfast, which is tomorrow morning at Corderville Hall from 7:30 to 9 o'clock. And I know that Vanessa and Mark have worked very hard in starting to put together this important event. I know that. Is everyone planning to be there? Okay, good, good.
Great breakfast.
Yep, and we'll also be honoring, recognizing several employees who have recently or who are in the category of over 25 years or more of service. Did I get the years correctly? Okay, and impressively, we have, is that 6 we have?
Well, let's just read their names.
Okay.
There you go.
Good. We're going to be recognizing Dean Sabelli from the DPW. Bridget Glennie from the DPW. George Mooney, also from the DPW, so I think it's a credit to the DPW that you have some very, very dedicated, longstanding employees. Kim Ivers, Assistant Library Director. Tim Slatkovitz, Police Sergeant. And Gene Johnson, also Business Administrator of the Southborough DPW, and Cynthia Beard, Outreach Coordinator of the Council on Aging. So Kathy, my hesitation on announcing that is now it's going to be less of a surprise now when we do it tomorrow morning. At 8
I don't
o'clock.
think they're listening to this meeting necessarily.
Oh, no, everybody.
But if they didn't come, then this way we recognize.
That's
them.
right.
So that's,
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. But because there's free food,
yes.
a lot of people do come. It's a great event.
But Bill, 4 out of 8 are yours. So there you go.
And then the final update I have is I had a nice coffee last weekend with Doug Peck, who's the chair of the Southborough Council on Aging. He had reached out to me to just kind of touch base, and you know, he was stressing how seniors are a growing percentage of our population, and that's going to continue. And I mentioned that Kathy, I certainly remember you repeatedly, bringing this up at the advisory committee, thinking about priorities and the demographic studies that are done with the school projects of, I agree, and, mentioned that we feel good about senior center expansion and gave, we considered an approved increase in Council on Aging operating budget last year. He also, Doug mentioned that historically there was a program on Southborough Access Media where either Doug is going to be doing this going forward, I think, but to invite some board members to come and have kind of an interview show on Southborough Access Media. So I think he's trying to revive that. And another thing that we're going to do is Vanessa is going to come to the employee recognition breakfast tomorrow with a bunch of copies of the newsletter and thinking about ways we can publicize the town administrator newsletter better. We want to get it, bring copies to the senior center, and Vanessa also made a good point about we should also be distributing at the library and Colonial Gardens. So I think that's a way also that, the senior center can help us, is if we distribute the newsletter more broadly there. We can get out some news about some of the good things that are happening directly to seniors. All right. So then under members report, I know we have master plan implementation update and update on regional dispatch, but I understand, Al, you have a prepared statement that you would like to read.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, one of the most important duties of the select board is the effective administration of tax monies taken from the public. While the public is not entitled to perfection in this administration, I believe it was and is entitled to more effective oversight than in the matter of the so-called St. Mark's Park. I stood on the floor of town meeting and advocated for the funds to finish this project as the least expensive way out of a bad situation. I have further advocated that we put this sorry affair behind us and moved on. Despite this, I perceive that based on how this project was conceived, managed, funded, there's a lingering reservoir of skepticism and mistrust in our community directed at our municipal government's ability to responsibly manage and account for the monies of these projects. While the skepticism and mistrust fostered by this project were the result of prior board's actions, it falls to this board to take proactive steps to reassure the public that it has the capacity to responsibly manage the funds provided by the taxpayers. It is even more important as we anticipate asking the public for large funds for a school project and potentially other projects. It gives me no pleasure, but I have reluctantly concluded that a necessary step in regaining this trust is an independent audit of this project. I respectfully request that the select board place this matter on its agenda at its earliest convenience. The goal should be to identify and quantify the direct and indirect costs associated with this project, including legal, engineering, design, administration, and construction, and other costs associated with the project. The results should be presented in a public forum and to town meeting. I believe these actions are necessary to regain the public's trust and to reassure a skeptical public that the select board takes its responsibility for the effective administration of public monies seriously, as I know it does. I request that this address be entered into the minutes and would have provided a electronic copy to the chair.
Yep, and we're not going to get into a discussion or back and forth about this, and by recognizing you to, isn't meant as any endorsement of what you're saying, but I understand you felt very strongly about saying what you just said. So the next members report is a master plan implementation update.
That's
Dan?
mine. Yes, thank you. As folks know, I'm the select board's designee for the master plan implementation committee. And one of the things that this master plan implementation committee is focused on is more organized, focused follow-up to the current master plan than we saw in the 2008 master plan, which was an interesting document, but there really wasn't nearly as much organized follow-up, given that there were several hundred implementation steps and dozens of goals, et cetera. It sort of got smeared out over the town volunteer and department structure with less focus than I think would have been helpful to get some things done. And so we're trying to be more focused. And one of those efforts is to try to coordinate between where the money is through the budget process and where the select board is focused from a goal standpoint and the master plan activities. And so we've had discussions around a discussion between the select board and the planning board, who is responsible for the master plan process, to see if we can align things that are in the master plan goals with select board goals where we think there is potential for some movement and financial support going forward. Not that one list is more important than the other, but opportunities to examine those overlaps and find places where we can work together to generate forward progress over the next year or more here. So there's no lack of good, useful goals here. And I think the focus is try to be more concentrated with the master plan implementation committee and the structure that has with the select board activities going forward. So planning board discussed this joint discussion at their last meeting. Not totally clear to me, Ms. Luttrell, what the next step there is. I think the planning board's going to continue to talk about that, but the master plan implementation committee's suggestion was that we have a meeting that considers our goals that we selected back in July, how they overlay with the master plan goals, and take input from the planning board as we work together to figure out where we can collaborate on activities over this next fiscal year and beyond. So hopefully that can occur in the reasonably near future, but I guess I would look to a little more input from the planning board in terms of how they would like that to happen based on the conversation recently there. So opportunity, but to be followed up on.
And then there's an update on regional dispatch, and I don't know whether you would like to handle that or Al.
I
would
think
like to
that's
handle that.
Al's
Thank you.
bailiwick.
Sam and I, Mark and the two chiefs, took a trip to Holbrook and viewed their regional dispatch operation. And speaking for myself, I was quite impressed. The interesting thing about Holbrook is that they have a completely different business model. Their operation is really a subsidiary of the town of Holbrook, but they currently provide regional dispatch services for about 10 communities, covering about 200,000 people, and they've been doing it since 2008. They appeared to have both scale and experience, both of which I think are critical to any regional system that we might want to join. The scale is important. They serve about 200,000 people, and they have now experienced onboarding multiple communities. It's interesting that that's the good news. I think we were positively impressed. On the negative side, they are currently at or near their capacity of their existing facility. They are looking at expanding in this area, as there appear to be a number of communities that have been speaking with them about the potential of joining their system. And I did, after the meeting, mention that we have a building, and they said that that was at least interesting enough to discuss. Obviously referring to 21 Highland as a building that might be a potential site. But I think it was a very good meeting. They have an impressive operation, and I think we should engage with them further.
Okay. Mark?
Thank you. So just a couple of notes on a couple of things that were said before. I do also want to thank Steve Wynot for his service and acknowledge that one of the final things that he did in his capacity as Veterans Graves Officer was to work with DPW to help with the placement of the flags outside of the wall of the old burial ground per the new flag policy. So appreciate his efforts to work with DPW to get that happening. I saw DPW was out there getting the holders in the ground installed. So we'll have those all ready for complying with the policy for Veterans Day. Secondly, I just want to acknowledge, because the police chief is sitting here. And I did send my town administrator report around and to try and get a little bit more publicity offered to the departments. If you would share this on your social media pages, and in my brief viewing of social media and everything in that, chief was nice enough to put it out on the department's Facebook page. So that meant another 6, 7 people, sorry, maybe. So I appreciate that. We talked a little bit about board and committee vacancies. You did a couple of things tonight, which took a couple off the deck. I did want to, we are in a better position than we have been at times in terms of vacancies, but I do want to highlight a couple. We do continue to have, several vacancies. Community Preservation Committee. We took care of the citizen at large, but we have, with SHOPC, we have Housing Authority Representative, Open Space. We need someone there. Cable TV is beginning to try to meet again. It's a 5-member committee. The charge says they need to have at least 3. Right now, they only have 2.
Mhm.
And because these cable contracts are being renewed for shorter periods of time, the committee has to be more active than it normally would. Normally, you'd do a 10-year contract and you'd forget about it for a little while, but the ascertainment periods are opening up quicker. So right now, you've got Will Warren and Barry Rubenstein. Barry is the chair, and they want to meet, can't meet because they don't have members.
I actually have some interest in that one.
You have time?
Or not time, but interest. Is select board excluded from that? I don't know. Cable?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so. Again, see what you get in terms of solicitation, but I followed that in the last couple of renewals.
Yeah.
And
I suggest you may want to give Barry a call
yeah, okay.
and have a conversation with him. You know,
He may not want me, but
well, you know, I
Barry Rubenstein, Will Warren,
and Will Warren are the two that are
That's
left.
it.
That's it.
And it's 3%.
they need
We've-
minimum of 3, yeah.
I'm looking at Miss Hale, but I don't believe we've ever had 5. It's been a long time since 5. Through the last ascertainment process, we just had 3.
Yeah, 3 is what I've.
Yeah,
had
so we've only had 3.
5 years or so.
And the commitment is not consistent, but you know, it's fairly short term.
And they have an attorney they work with on the tech.
We do use
details.
counsel. I
Helpful.
think that the committee is looking to use counsel more, I think, to kick off the process and then to wrap up the process at the end, but Barry feels that the
Yeah.
committee can take care of the process in the middle. So, yeah.
Negotiate directly with Verizon,
Yeah, Verizon and Charter.
Comcast, yeah,
Yep, those are the two. And
Mike.
again,
agree.
it's-
My mic's on.
yeah, and it basically,
Because I put it on for you.
Oh.
Yeah. we have
Yeah.
made some progress in getting those payments ramped up some with the last renewal, as a matter of fact. So who knows how much more potential there is, but it's something that actually is a lot of people care about.
But that's it, those two companies, that's
Yeah.
who their
Yeah.
agreements were.
No, 3.
What, 3? Okay, so
Comcast,
Comcast.
Comcast, they're-
So is it that these two are the ones that are up and Comcast is not up?
no, all of them are up at the same time, I think, almost.
I think
not quite.
it's 5-year deals that they're doing now, shorter deals. So,
There
I
were
think.
2 of them that were up at the same
Yeah.
time, as I recall.
So,
Anyway, so.
yeah. So anyway, and I also will point out Economic Development Committee, you know, they're down 3 members. And so, you know, it is something else that, you know, we do need to try to take a look at.
On the banner page for the town website, are we?
We can do something to try to
Okay.
highlight a lot of
Yeah.
these. Yep.
Is advisory full?
I don't know, but that's not your,
Yeah, that's town.
No,
your-
but we still want to
Okay,
make sure
advertise,
that
yeah.
advisory is healthy and full. So yes, it's not. ours,
advisory's
but-
got 1 vacancy
Okay, well, that's,
that I'm showing.
all right.
Yeah, they have 1 vacancy. Okay, so the last thing, you know, I always try to end with good news. You may have seen some information going around. Recreation Department's announced that the AEDs, and this was in my newsletter, so maybe if you read the newsletter, this is already old news. That AEDs have been placed at all school fields. The rec department did get a generous donation from the Malinowski family and funding from the Choate Fund grant cycle to be able to do that. So they have been putting out flyers, just showing you kind of where the locations are for each field on the fence. You know, we've actually, we had some training from the fire chief at one of our department head meetings. Bill, you missed that, so we'll do it again for you. But it's, you know, it's great to have that and to be able to have that resource where, you know, minutes matter, you know, when things like that happen. So it's really, it's great to know. So thank you for the donations and for recreation for getting that done.
I'm disappointed that we don't have one behind the select board table here, just in case.
It's right down below us, so.
Good.
Sam, you just stick your fingers on the plug behind you.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any holds on the consent agenda?
A,
Okay, and also that should be September 18, 2023.
Yep, that
September
was the
18,
revised agenda.
2019.
That revised agenda has the correct date.
Got it. Okay, what are the holds that you, or were the corrections?
918 and 1019, I'm fine with. 1010, I've got a couple of small points.
Okay,
1010 line 94. If retirees move instead of id retirees move. And
Yes.
lines 168 and 169, I was quoted there not quite accurately. And I would propose a change in the sentence about the MWRTA Catch Connect program. And what I would say is that he described a MWRTA pilot program, Catch Connect, in 3 other communities that we might explore for Southborough. This service allows residents to call and request transportation within their community. That changed because I didn't say that we could do that, because that's a possibility. And there's no guarantee of service time for that. In other words, it gets you on the list, and typically it's relatively fast response. But again, having those numbers in there is not accurate. So I would replace that one sentence. And I can send that, Mark.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I'm
you
sure,
for
I'm sure
Bridget.
Bridget would
Okay.
appreciate that.
And
Thank
then
you.
line 169, he also reported that there may be ...
Okay.
So I'll send those to you. That's it for me.
I had just a couple. For October 10th, I realize this is very pedantic, but under public comment, line 15, where it says CPIC, again, I think I would, for someone who may not know what CPIC stands for, spell it out the first time you use it, and then the second time that happens is line 80. Mr. Ballantyne, Finance Director, Rusty Short and Ken Lombardi, both from NFP. Write it out the first time, because maybe people don't know what NFP is. And the same thing, it's done the way I like it on line 108. It says, and member of the Insurance Advisory Committee, parentheses IAC. So we can do this. And then that's my only thing. I just would make a case, if you're using an acronym, write it out the first time. It's much more resident friendly. That's all.
Okay. I move that we approve the open session meeting minutes as amended.
Second,
All those in favor? All those opposed? And I move that we approve consent agenda item B.
second,
All those in favor? Most, okay. Turning to other matters, update on ARPA expenditure and allocations, and status of evaluation of sidewalks for ARPA allocation. I'd like to turn it over to Kathy for this.
So Vanessa, can you pop up spreadsheet? So I handed out to everybody when I got here tonight, a spreadsheet that's easier for you to, you need a copy, Mark?
Please.
Sorry.
Thank you.
It's easier to read than what was in your packet, because we've got a lot of detail in the spreadsheet now, as far as, votes that we took to move things around. So just to refresh everyone's memory, there was an ad hoc committee formed after the federal ARPA law was passed to recommend to the select board what the town wanted to do with the $3,051,241 that was allocated to the town of Southborough. Andrea Hamilton was the chair. They did a great job. Came back and recommended every single penny except for $737. So they gave select board nothing to play with here. So the select board has diligently followed the recommendations all the way through. With one really tiny exception, we did allocate $800 or $8,500 to Shopsy for their work with the MAPC report that they did recently on affordable housing. Other than that, we have really followed the recommendations. We've had to move a few things around within a group, but we have been pretty religious as far as sticking to what they ask us to do based on the input that they got from the town. So we have to spend this money. It has to be spent out the door by 12/31/26. However, we have to have it encumbered, contract signed no later than 12/31/24. So as of tonight, we have actually spent $576,000 out of the $3 million. Right. So we've got about a sixth of it out the door. Now, there's no reason to panic. We've got it all in buckets. We've got plans for the most of it, but I'm going to go over tonight where I think we've really got to focus so that the time limits I just described don't slip away. So let me just start there. So there's three things I think we've got to talk about tonight. One is National Grid. We've got $232,000 set aside right now for purchase of the National Grid property that is behind Southborough House of Pizza. We've talked about it a lot. This was Sam's proposal. He has been promoting this for quite a while. It's a piece of land that we could use, but we're running out of time to get that piece of it done, because this is why this is going to be a problem. To the extent we can't use money the way we have intended here, what we've decided to do is put it into the general tax relief bucket. And if we're going to do that, we've got to use it on the budget that we're about to start working on, fiscal year 25 budget, which will be decided in March of 24. So therefore, if we don't have National Grid decided under contract, ready to go by then, I think we're going to have to probably consider moving it out. And I'm looking at you, Sam, because I know you're disappointed, out of that bucket, because we're not going to have time to get it done. Unless you really, know that you've got a deal in the works that may be palatable. So that's one thing we've got to keep our eye on, is that one. Second one is the upgrade of Wi-Fi throughout the town. So tonight I'm going to ask for 5 different votes that's going to include part of that. So the only thing we have specifically allocated out of that bucket is $10,000 to assess what the town needs. Jay needs more than that. He needs $21,000. He's got a quote now. It's going to take $21,000 to literally assess what we need to do to upgrade the Wi-Fi. And I'm looking towards you in case you disagree with this, Mr. Litt. So we ought to vote that tonight, because he's got the proposal. He's ready to go. He's got to get going on that too. So again, that's going to take a while to get done. We're talking about Wi-Fi upgrades in maybe most of the buildings in town, maybe not public safety, but all the other ones. So that is a point that we've really got to work on. Sidewalks. We've got $704,000 allocated toward new sidewalks. Capital has been charged with putting together the plan to recommend what those sidewalks should be. We've asked them to come back with an overall plan saying this is where we should put sidewalks in Southborough, knowing that 704 will just make a small dent in that, but we still were trying to get a plan so that we could work toward, right? So they're working on that, but they are waiting for the beta group to come forth with their report as far as the sidewalk status. So this one's a little bit worrisome because it's going to take a while, as Bill has described tonight before the meeting started, to truly figure out what we want to do and then get it designed and then get the plans in place to acquire whatever land we may need to do those sidewalks and then get it done. So that one is by far the longest term, most work project that's left here. So we're going to have to really keep our eyes on that one. One thing, Bill, we did talk about, I meant to say when you're doing your update, we have talked about over time, including in the advisory committee, possibly floating bonds to do just a massive amount of sidewalks or a massive amount of roads at once. And, it's probably more palatable when interest rates were lower a couple of years ago. They've shot up just, a lot in the last couple of years, but it's still probably worth considering if, we come up with a plan and we think there's some economies of scale. But that's got to be the big one we've really got to watch, is the sidewalks, to make sure that we don't run out of time to get that done. Because that contract's got to be signed and we've got to have the plans in place. You can't sign the contract till you have the plans by the end of next year.
Can I make a comment about that?
Yep.
I guess I have not seen the beta project as necessarily on the critical path for this one, in the sense that I've followed the conversations about sidewalks. We had a sidewalk committee in 2015 that made recommendations. And then VHB, I think, as we looked at the Corderville Road project, came up with some additional recommendations about sidewalks. And it seems to me that there are several that I would put on the, obvious high priority list. Things like Richards Road, for example, seems to be one that's key, linked to the Fenn School area. And a couple of others, I think, are fairly clearly ones that are widely supported and make a lot of sense. I think that, and again, I don't have nearly as good a feel as Bill or others do about the cost of these projects, but my guess is that we could use the 704,000 fairly quickly for a fairly small number of what most people would agree are high priority sidewalks. The beta project I've always seen as being part of a longer term plan. And that, in my view, is the one that links back into a bonded lump sum to say, okay, now if we're going to do a phase 2, with bonded funds, that's where I would look for strong input from Beta. So that's the way I've looked at this. I could certainly be, convinced to look at it otherwise if engineers or others have a different view of that one, but that seems to me to fit what we need here in some ways.
So if select board agrees with that path, use Beta for the long term and just ask capital come forth with sidewalks that we know that have been recommended by a variety that seem to be commonly agreed upon.
Yeah, with input from Public Works and others.
Capital is waiting for Beta. So we need to
Okay.
tell them we don't want them to wait for Beta. We want them to go ahead. Bill says $700,000 is not going to build a whole lot of sidewalks anyway. It's not like we're going to sidewalk the town with $700,000. So it could be that the better route to go is to ask capital to come forth with what they know that a large amount of people have recommended over the years with your input also, to get that one
A
moving.
combination of what people want as well as difficulty and cost of construction. I mean, how do you get the most bang for the buck if you've got 700,000 to spend here?
Yeah, what we have here is a case of the perfect being the enemy of the good.
So what do you recommend?
I'm in complete agreement with Sam, find a couple of straightforward projects and get them done. And then as far as, bonding, I think that this is going to take a little while to do and, we can
Sure.
perhaps wait for a slightly better interest rate environment.
Mm.
But, it's going to take more time, but, we need to build something, not talk about building something.
No, I feel the same way, and I also feel that although we've bucketed 704,000 for this, I think if, I see some items on here that I might want to move around and add them to sidewalks and get a little bit more bang for the buck on
Wait a minute.
sidewalks. So, 704 is the number right now, but don't feel overly constrained by that number.
How much sidewalk would 704 build?
It depends on a lot of different factors.
Is where it is. Yeah.
There's a lot to it. Where the way take things,
Mike.
What is the most you could get out of it? If everything was straightforward, you didn't have to take anything?
There's a lot to it. It's not
Flat
that
and easy.
straightforward.
Yeah.
But what I will say is some of the obvious choices, like I think Sam, you said the Finn School,
Richards Road. Yeah.
you might want to take a step back on that because there is state funding for Safe Roads to School, which would pay for sidewalks. So, that would probably be a better candidate for the state funding.
Okay.
It's something the obvious one may not be the one we want to
Okay.
pursue at this point,
Yep. Again, I say obvious with
Yeah.
appropriate professional
but I
input.
agree with you.
to that.
Let's get it done.
Yep.
Right.
Let's do near term. Let's do what makes sense as best we can collectively tell, and then think about a bigger project with Beta guidance.
So Andrew, what were you thinking besides sidewalks? I was curious.
Hold the thought.
Yeah.
We're gonna go through these,
Excellent.
okay? As far as possibly doing a few things with this. Okay, so just to recap, the big sticking points are sidewalks, National Grid and Wi-Fi. They're big projects they need to get going, okay? And National Grid, if we're gonna do it, we gotta do it soon, Sam.
Yep.
Okay. All right, now there are 5 potential votes tonight to do what Andrew just said, possibly move things around a little bit. These are not significant things, but these are things that have been requested. In one case, we can close out one thing. It's not much money, but every little bit counts, I guess. So let's just start with that. The first project that truly is done, and everybody agrees it's done. Carla has gone through this. She agrees this is done. She's asked for this one to be closed out. That is under the second category, ARPA administration. It is the ADA upgrades that were rec related. So we allocated $20,000, 18,570 has been spent. So we want to vote tonight to move $1,430 out of that to either our general number, unallocated number, or to our tax relief number, one of those two. We've been moving it to tax relief. It doesn't really matter. We can always
Yeah.
do it later. So I don't think we should get hung up on that. So someone should make a motion to move that to one of those two categories.
How much?
$1,430.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Okay. And we want to do this one at a time so Carla can watch this and make sure she keeps track of this so that we really do this right.
Can we just clarify what the destination of those funds was? Why don't we put it in the general fund?
That's-
Okay,
General.
so,
Tax relief, Andrew.
well, that's two different things, okay?
Yeah.
We've got the unallocated.
Unallocated.
Okay, so you want to go unallocated,
Yes,
which is fine with me.
we can always move it into,
That's right, that's
into
right.
tax relief.
I thought Andrew,
Motions Call it unallocated to be clear.
thought Andrew said
Put Colin
tax
up.
relief.
Okay, can you show me where your unallocated is?
It's just the very bottom line that says we've got 730, the 43,577 at the bottom of page 2. That's your unallocated.
I move that the board move $1,430 from our allocation to ADA upgrades rec related to unallocated.
Second,
All those in favor?
Okay, the second one is Mr. Haggerty's clickers. I don't know why we didn't change this number, but we knew it should be changed. So he needs, let me get his number. It's not 5,000. Jim needs in total to do the clickers for the next town meeting, right? For March of 2024, $18,600. Right, so, but you want 18,600 in total, right? 5,000 is to rent them first to see if we like them, right? And then you want the 13,600 to be able to purchase them if we like them, right? So you're gonna make the decision after the first town meeting, whether to go forward. You'll have the money to do it if you decide to go forward. And the rental gets applied against it, so we get credit for the rent payment, right? Okay, so what we want to do is have a motion to increase, take out of that unallocated number, $13,600, and put it into the clicker number that right now only has $5,000 in it. And the clicker is on the first page. It's the third from the bottom.
right,
So moved.
second.
All those in favor?
Okay. All right, Jim. So now you officially have 18,600. Okay, now the third one involves a request by Kevin Miller, the Historical Commission Chair, who is here now. This is pretty small, but important stuff. So you may recall that one of the allocations was to buy 7 historic district signs to show people where all the historic districts are. Those signs were bought. We have them. They're ready to be installed. Kevin's working with Bill to figure out how to get those done. And I've got the answer for Knights of Columbus for you. So they're working to get those done. There's about $4,000 left in that category. And Kevin has sent an email and asked that the Historic Commission basically retain control of that 4,000 and be allowed to use it for one of 4 things, which includes fixing the fence that's around the old burial ground.
Town common.
Common, okay, so the fence. They want to put a plaque that's at the historic water tower in the rural cemetery. There's a small house there. And they want to put a plaque there to explain to people go there what it is, what it was. It was an old place to generate water, right? They also want $1,000 to seed the historic house signs programs, which they are restarting after a hiatus due to the death of the sign maker. So they want this $4,230 to be used for a combination of these. They don't have the exact cost for everything yet, so it may not perfectly do this, but they at least have 42. They would, if we voted for this, they'd have another $4,230 to use toward one or more of these other uses.
All right, so one of them is something we just talked about earlier today, which is the town common project. So I don't think we need to. That starts to get confusing to have a really small amount of ARPA money dedicated to that, where I thought our agreed next step was Historical Commission, Select Board are gonna work on a scope of project, and then so that, I'm not in favor of including that.
So why don't we, what about this?
As a process, I'm hearing about this stuff like for the first time.
Well, could Kevin speak to, I mean, some of that fence is in pretty bad shape. I'm wondering, Kevin, if you could speak to what you think it would cost to fix it or what you could do stopgap. Is that okay, Andrew? Just before we vote?
What fence are we talking about?
The rail one with the concrete posts.
And the
Well,
town.
it's not gonna,
Town common.
It's not gonna comment, and it could hurt people.
Yeah, it's really.
It's sticking up. It's got barbs sticking up.
okay, but this is really something that is a DPW working on.
In some places, the granite has split, and in other places, the granite needs to be treated so it doesn't split.
Yeah, but I know, and that's just what we were talking about is what we're gonna have a, we work with Bill. Bill would help define the scope of a project where we do all these things in a coordinated
Without ARPA money.
fashion. This is just getting,
All right.
Yeah.
like, just because there's a little kitty of money left, I'm sure it really helps it happen by having some really small amount of.
Okay.
Sure.
It would help. And this was just a thought, because we were fortunate enough to go under budget on the.
You
on
introduce
the-
yourself, please.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Kevin, Chair of the Historical Commission. We were fortunate enough with the National Register signs to come in under budget. And, I asked for 1,000 to help with the Historic House Signs program, because we'd really like to ramp that up and give more signs away and get that going. Our budget quite small. Our annual budget is $1,000. So this would be a real help. The small amount, I'm estimating now 500 for a small marker for that water tower, because it's a fascinating structure. I know Bill's working on getting it re-roofed. And I've discovered in conversations with various people that nobody knows what that was. So it's a wonderful way to call attention to it. And then with regard to the remaining 2,500 that I had suggested, be rolled toward the fence repair around the common, that was simply a way for, I wanted to indicate the Historical Commission's commitment to that project. And so I understand, Andrew, where you're coming from. As part of a larger thing, if you want to sweep the whole money, that $2,500 back into the general ARPA fund, I'm all in support of it, because I understand, and you're quite right, that it's going to take more than that. That was simply my indicating a desire for that, I think, was a gesture of how important it is to the Historical Commission for us to get that fixed up, because as Marguerite said, it's actually a safety issue as well as an aesthetic one, and important for the tricentennial. So, but if I completely defer to the select board in terms of if you want to sweep that money back into the general pool, that's fine. And we'll have to work together to find what the cost for that fence repair really will be and how we're going to get the money. So whatever you want to do is fine.
And if we want to pull money out of the general thing back into this project later, we could certainly do that
Yeah.
as well.
Well, the three things that Kevin has suggested, two of them do kind of relate to the cemetery project. So we've talked tonight about freeing up funds, as we've talked about before, to work on both cemeteries, Old Burial Ground and Rural Cemetery. So we think that is going to go forward, right?
Right.
Working with you guys too. So we could wait on those two and have that part of the project, but why not at least do the $1,000 that won't be part of that for the Historic House Signs program as a compromise?
I don't mind doing all but 2,500 actually. But I'm not,
Yeah, I mean, if you,
So we pull
I suggest-
2,500 back
Back,
and then give Historic Commission
the remainder.
to work on the.
they give us the
These other
1,500
Yeah.
and take the 25 back, that's fine with me. And I'm very appreciative of your support tonight.
And
So,
I think we want to make the other things happen, certainly, but maybe with other funds.
oh, yeah. And I don't care what the mechanism is and how we get the money, just as long as we do it. And like I said, I sent that in my email to indicate that, again, to show that we really care about that particular issue, and we're going to work our damnedest with you guys to try to fix it. So.
So,
So you're just talking now about, so set aside the railing thing.
Yep.
You're just suggesting of this leftover money that we,
Sam is suggesting pull 2,500 out of this back into our general, into the catch-all.
yeah,
And then
allocate.
leave the rest of it and reallocate that to Historic Commission's use for the house sign program, Historic House Sign Program.
the house sign program and the water tower.
And the water tower.
Tower signage.
okay.
So I'll move that we return $2,500 to the unallocated pool, reserving the balance for the Historic Commission's use in the signage for the water tower, in the rural cemetery, and in the historic house signage program.
Second,
All those in favor?
Thank you so much, gang.
Go forth and sign as they.
Easy. Okay, the next one is easy. So if you take a look at the second page, we had allocated, our ARPA committee had originally allocated $220,000 for the overall town Wi-Fi upgrades. We took 10 out of that and specifically approved that for the assessment. Jay is now asking us to increase that 10 to 21,000 tonight because he's got the proposal in front of him. It's a lot more than he thought, but it is what it is. So he can get going with that piece of it.
Increase the 10 to 21,000.
Yeah, so we take it out of the 210. Okay, so the 210 is going to go down to 199.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then we specifically have authorized him to spend $21,000.
That sounds good.
So moved.
Right.
Second.
All those in favor?
Okay, so that votes.
You have a comment in the audience?
Okay. Oh, just a minute, Tim. Other than out of respect for Sam, do we want to leave National Grid where it is and give it a little bit more time?
I would like a little bit more time, but
Okay.
I thought he was going to cede the money to Mr. Cundiff and help him with his engineering for the.
Well, I actually, in all seriousness, that's why I said, Bill, that to me, that's where we'd get the money. for
That's
the-
why Bill's still here.
Yeah,
it's right.
so
He's
not,
just hanging out like a bull.
that's where we could get the money.
You're talking about for the culverts?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, if
yeah,
he, because
yeah.
I think Bill's really worried about Willow Street.
Yeah.
And I'm worried about Willow Street. So, we may not be able to wait to town meeting to do that piece. So we may need to use some of this money to.
Believe it or not, I'm not averse to that actually,
Okay.
but let me see what I can do short term about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it sounds like I suspect if we've got 3 or 4 of these, that this was the common practice of the era. And it's lasted for 60 years, we've gotten our money's worth out of it, I guess.
What is it?
We're now paying the piper here.
This is part of the depreciation we
I-
never talk about.
And then I talked to him, he said, no, he said they still got some more bills. So we checked with every single person on this to see if they're ready to turn it back. And the only one we returned back was Tim Davis at 1400.
Okay, is that it?
That is it. So the summary is, we'll talk to Jason Malinowski, make sure he knows we want him to go ahead with the sidewalks, not wait for beta, right? Mark will tell Jay Montijo, we voted to give him 11, so you can go ahead with that one, right? And we'll leave National Grid where it is for the moment.
Lit had a question.
Okay. All right. Can we?
Mr. Lit had a comment.
Mr. Lit.
in Woodland Road. Since Ms. Cook asked or said she was looking at me on the question of Wi-Fi, I'll make a comment on that. I haven't seen this particular survey proposal, so I don't have a position on that. But I do have a general comment in terms of Wi-Fi upgrade. I'm supportive of Wi-Fi upgrades that solve coverage problems. I'm not particularly supportive of let's upgrade to the latest version of Wi-Fi just because it's there. It tends to be expensive. The current upgrades, provide bandwidth for things like streaming and Internet of Things that, we're not using, and it doesn't make sense. I mean, that's a rapidly evolving technology, and there's a lot more, hype and wishful thinking behind it than real technology. That's sort of where I stand on that.
Were you involved when the ARPA committee met with whoever came forth with?
No,
Okay, so you don't know what the discussion was.
I
Tim Patel was on that committee. He's pretty good about the stuff. So I just took it at face value that we need to upgrade the Wi-Fi because
what I have heard from Jay when I've sort of poked at it a little bit is that, well, we have coverage issues. Well, $210,000 worth of coverage issues seems awfully large.
Big number.
And feels a lot more like an attempt to get to Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 99 plus. And, those things are where I don't think that technology is stable yet.
well, won't the assessment point this out? Won't the assessment come
Well-
back and say, this is where you need it, where you don't need it?
A Wi-Fi survey looks at coverage issues by and large. It doesn't look at the bandwidth requirements and the future bandwidth requirements. The surveys tend to be a radio frequency survey that says are you getting enough signal here, there, and everywhere?
Mhm.
You know,
But isn't that what we want them to tell us?
you,
Among other things.
as I say, I'm supportive of half of this, right? I'm supportive of the half that says, find the coverage holes and fix them. I'm not supportive, at this point of trying to latch on to the latest Wi-Fi technology because it's there, and that's what people tend to push.
But let's let the technology committee stay connected with this, and I'm sure they'll have some
Yeah.
opinions about it.
I agree.
They have a tendency to look for the latest.
I agree with Mr. Litt, coverage is important. Unless somebody has a very, very specific need for bandwidth in excess of what exists today
Yep.
at reasonable prices. Our employees, as a general rule, should not be streaming in their offices, sending emails, sending plans, PDFs. Sure,
I mean, 8K HDTV streaming, we don't have a use for.
yeah.
And the concern is, yes, you might justify a spot upgrade in a meeting room or something. But you don't want to spend money for technology that ain't ready yet.
Yeah.
All right, so
that-
let's do the
agreed.
assessment and then
Agreed.
Yeah.
reassess.
Well, I think we need to be clear about what we want out of the assessment. Because if we don't, we will certainly get more than we really need.
Mhm.
He's got a proposal, so, we're pretty much
Yep.
saying go tonight. We've given him the money to do it.
And Mark hears this, so Mark is the connection to.
Okay, so I think that's the ARPA update.
Okay, I think this would be a good point to take a quick
Yeah, by the way,
Five-
thank you. This is
5-10
excellent.
minute break.
Yeah, it's really good.
And so for the next item on the agenda, potential select board letter of support to ZBA Ray 120 Turnpike Road. I apologize, the draft letter which you circulated to me was in my inbox. I didn't push it out to the rest of the board, but I did about 15 minutes ago. So it's this is the world's, it's a very, very simple, straightforward
Yep.
letter. So even though you're just seeing it now, I think it's straightforward enough. We can still
Okay,
decide whether or not to do it. And I'll just read the whole thing
Yeah.
out loud in the meeting
Okay.
room.
is the next agenda item the town center old burial ground, or you're saying we were?
We basically
discussed that.
talked
We
about
did that out of the
it.
ARPA.
Basically
Okay.
talked about it.
So we'll take a break.
Yep, okay, so we'll take a quick break.
Thank you, Bill.
Oh, yeah, and
So Kevin. So Chris Robbins did know who to reach at Knights of Columbus. Nobody else of Columbus. If you tell me who to reach, he gave me the phone number. I called the phone number. It's out of service. So I've got to call Chris Robbins back. They know who to call. They knew who to call.
Yeah, well, they say that I went to work also.
He said to call John Andres, who he said is very
All right. All right, we'll end that little sidebar. Has everyone had a chance to review the draft letter on 120 that Kathy prepared and I just sent around?
Yes.
Okay, so I will read it out loud. It's addressed to David Williams as the chair of the ZBA. Dear David, we are writing to express our support of the 40B project proposed for 120 Turnpike Road. The project sponsor, FD 120 Turnpike Road LLC, has recently received their project eligibility letter from Mass Housing. Expectations are that the project sponsor will be filing for a comprehensive permit with the Southborough ZBA in short order. The select board unanimously supports this project as it does not have any abutter issues, is relatively small and has good ingress and egress. And most importantly, the project will add 15 units of below market rental housing to Southborough's housing inventory. The concerns that have been raised by others have been noted in the Mass Housing PEL, project eligibility letter, and mostly are concerns about the impact on the abutting Breakneck Hill conservation land. We certainly want you to take those concerns into account, but we believe that they are surmountable. We would be happy to discuss further with you. And the context of this is, as people will recall, there's currently 3 different 40B projects in different phases. The Park Central project received a project eligibility letter like a year ago, and the public hearing on the comprehensive permit application has opened. 120, far simpler, received a project eligibility letter very soon. So their next step would be to file for the comprehensive permit. And 250 Turnpike Road, I guess, is still waiting for a project eligibility letter from Mass Housing. This is on the agenda because I think that the consensus that we seem to have when we discussed this before was that 120 makes good progress towards the subsidized housing inventory and just does not have the abutter and ingress egress concerns that particularly Park Central has, and to a much lesser extent, I think 250. So you know, ultimately the ZBA makes the decision about how it handles this particular application, but you know, for us as a policymaking board, I think it would be, you know, appropriate for us just a simple letter reiterating that we have, I come pretty close to saying, you know, unqualified support for this. The only comment is just the one that you put in there about, of course, take into a concern about, you know, the lighting and how that might impact Breakneck Hill Road. But this is one of the most important things, I think, facing the town right now, the sequencing of these different 40B projects. So the one that the 15 units, I thought this is 66 units and that they're apartments, and even if only 25% of them are affordable, you still get credit for all of them towards it.
It's true,
Okay.
but we're
They're
still,
apartments.
so my statement's still true. We're adding, I still think it's 60. So I may be wrong.
You're right. Okay,
Okay.
66 was the
Those
old
will be
target.
offered at less than market. So I'm just, so you're right. What you said is truly true. As far as we're going to add 60 to the SHI numerator, but you know, we've got 15 that are going to be offered at below market, which
Get
is
your
what I
mic
was trying
on.
to make there, which is what we need,
Your microphone. Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
the point I was trying to make there. So I'm right and you're right.
Yeah.
So we're both right.
Okay.
And Andrew, this is consistent with what we wrote to Mass Housing as well.
Yeah.
This letter, nothing new here. Our
Yeah,
Mass
the only, oh, I'm sorry. The
Go ahead.
only change, I agree, keep it short and simple. I would simply reference the fact that we supported the initial filing with Mass Housing unanimously. But yeah, keep it short and simple, and you know, because I think we want this to proceed expeditiously.
Yes. Okay, any comments? So I move that the select board approve sending this letter of support to the ZBA regarding 120 Turnpike Road.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, sounds good.
Marguerite, I did spell out project eligibility right before I did the PEL.
Yes.
Okay, and the next item on the agenda is the South Union School Study Committee. At our last meeting, we had a discussion about the draft charge that Al had prepared and some changes to it. And in the packet is basically a new version of this charge that reflects the changes that we discussed. There's still some like nitpicky, I think, stylistic changes that I would make, but other than that, does anyone have any questions or comments about it?
Yeah,
Sure.
Marguerite, go ahead. So I attended the meeting, which was the meeting of Shopsy Historic with representatives from Open Space Planning. Did I miss anybody, Kevin?
Recreation.
And Recreation, excuse me. That wanted to discuss future uses of 21 Highland and sat and discussed the matter for about 2 hours. I think there was a consensus amongst the group, and I'm not endorsing that consensus, but there was consensus among the group that Shopsy and planning should be put back in, and that 9 was not too big a number. And I was asked to carry that message, and I have carried it without comment. I think the challenge of this group, is that there are an awful lot of people who know what they don't want to have happen, and relatively few who actually have some vision of what they would like to happen. And I'm concerned that if we won't make progress if we spend our time talking about what we shouldn't do rather than more blue sky type options for what we might do. So, but that was the comment that and the message I brought back from that particular meeting.
All right, well, to your point about what people don't want, I mean, here's my sense from the several meetings that we've had, and I think people don't want significant change to how it looks right now, right? I think people would prefer to have the historic building, to keep the historic building, and also not develop the rest of the site. To not develop the rest of the site, right? It has some open space. There's the part that I think is to the west is open space. And it's already kind of a denser neighborhood by Southborough standards. And so I think even without the need for a committee, there seems to be a consensus about.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And keep the playground and the sledding hill or.
Yeah.
But I think, the manner of whatever permanent, was one of the things that was suggested is that we put an immediate historic restriction on the building, and I think we should not put any restrictions on the side of the building until we at least have an idea about what it is we'd like to do with the building, so that we can make sure that we act in concert.
Yeah. And I mean, also, I think ultimately, this is a committee, they'll generate a report, but ultimately, there's going to need to be just some leadership. And I think it's really the select board that's needed to ultimately come forward with a, recommendation to town meeting about this is what we think should happen. And ultimately, if it involves, if it involved a conveyance, then it would be up to town meeting to approve it or not by a 2/3 vote. So I'll say this, I think the reason why we at our last meeting, had the composition of the meeting, the committee as we did is just that 9-person committees tend to have trouble drawing quorums, just a very large number of people to have for a workable committee. And then you have, there's nothing that prevents people who are on a board that want to be on this committee to throw their hat in the ring for an at-large, one of the at-large positions as well.
Mhm. And Andrew, also, there's nothing that prohibits someone who is on a board who's not on this committee to attend a meeting, express
Yep.
opinions, and provide input
Yep,
process. So,
correct.
and again, I was one of the ones who also expressed concern about the larger committee. I've been on some of those. It does make it harder to sort of focus and get to the point, in my view. So, I did listen to the meeting that Shopsy hosted the other night, and there was a lot of back and forth. And again, I concur with Al that there were a lot of things that people didn't want to happen. But I think the real meat of this is to come up with a recommendation of what we think should happen. What should it look like? What should the uses be? How do we think about funding it and finding partners potentially who might work with us on this project, some very specific things. And that to me really sets a pretty high bar for, good organization, focus, rapid progress and so forth that I think you tend to lose as you get more and more people who have an oar in the water on the thing. So I remain, I heard the message, but I remain concerned about increasing the size of the committee, I guess, is sort of my feeling about it.
I agree. Marguerite?
I watched the Shopsy, also, I don't know why I'm calling it the Shopsy, the roundtable that Doriana put together. And I came away feeling that 9 would be better. Just because you have 9 kind of sources from the town of possibly good ideas. I read the charge and I think I would reorganize it a little bit. It seemed like part of it has to do with the timeline for when things need to get done. Part of it has to do with you can use town resources for this, that, and so on. So that is kind of like the what's the word I want? The options that are available to the members of the committee. And then the other thing that seemed to me is the makeup of the committee in a funny way is already answering. It's like it's already answering certain questions that we haven't decided. For instance, where's youth and family? They're using the building. They're not included in there. Is it sort of like, are they considered like they're not relevant?
No, I think that we anticipate that
They'll be out.
the flag school could become vacant soon after the Historical Society moves out and moves into Bayville Hall. That's
Right.
something that, and I think Youth and Family Services, or I mean, Sarah has said she's looked at that space and doesn't think
It's not
it's,
really
yeah,
right.
it's something that is a possibility. So then, of course, the
So are
one
we assuming then the recreation will be there? And not.
would be
somewhere
where?
We're
in that
assuming we
building?
have an answer for youth and family and Sarah she likes it.
Yes.
So that we're not pushing her. She likes it.
Right, okay.
We don't have an answer yet for rec if they
Right.
were to move out. We don't know what's going to happen to Finn. So rec would be, if we were to decide to use the building for something else,
Mhm.
sell the building, whatever, we would have to make sure we find a very good home for rec. So we don't have an answer to that yet.
Okay, so, but rec is still in play as possibly staying in the building, right?
Potentially.
Well, I think the premise here is that the bill that we're asking the question, what would we do if and only if the building became surplus to our identified needs, which means that we would have found that presumably we found a home that rec would prefer to be in, such as
Okay,
an unused school. And we have found a home for youth and family services that they would like, as well as any other claims that this building no longer had a good municipal purpose. The question is, what would we do with it? That seems to me to be, then the question becomes, well, what if something more immediate happened? And then you've got to deal with more functional questions.
Yes, and my other thought of it was the sledding hill and the building itself. The sledding hill is like part of the historic preservation for the building in a funny way, because it's a piece of landscaping that's historic landscaping, really, isn't it? I mean, it kind of fits in there. So I see the historical commission being interested in preserving the look. I don't see anybody dealing with the fact that it's a very old building. It's not really very ADA compliant. I think that's part of something you need to think about. Or would people be interested in pursuing an entity to buy it, or maybe to run it for the town? I mean, it seems like there's no of the members in there. It would be nice to have someone who would say, well, I'd like to look at it as real estate, and say, would there be a company that'd be interested in running it? Right? As far as affordable housing, I think we've said that it can't be done. Is that right?
No,
We think it's not in the cards based on. when you look at it. So that's why I don't know why Shopsy would be.
Yeah, that was my thing. It's like the decision's been made to put Shopsy in as.
Well, I think that's something that's still, worth considering. It's just from Al and I, when our meeting with John Parent, I think he made a good observation of, there's only X number of units you would be able to fit in this place, and you make more progress towards your affordable housing goals with private developments, and also the suggestion of maybe instead you do a better job of having someone who's dedicated from the town at looking at more underutilized properties that might be things like the 5 quarter, is it 5 quarter or 7? 5? 5, where, we had a debate about it. It didn't end up happening, but someone who's on the lookout for things like that could be a better use of
the
our
property.
affordable housing trust fund.
So possibly rec would be somewhere else and they wouldn't be involved, and then also Shopsy. I personally think it would not be a good use for affordable housing. As Al said, it's too expensive to do it, and it's got too many things that it would need to have to make it up to code. But so then would there be a possibility of building something else behind it? I mean, I don't see anything on this committee that would look at that.
So are you suggesting that, do you have like kind of bigger changes you would like to see to the committee charge that you think can't really be, you would want an additional meeting to think about doing that?
Yes, I would. I would like to see if it would be possible to have someone who would be more interested in it as real estate being on it. Partly because maybe you can put affordable housing right behind it. Or something in that area. I mean, I think that needs to be explored. And I don't think, as the committee's made, maybe someone at large would do it, but I think.
We could look for an at-large member, for example, who had
who would have that.
real estate
Yeah.
kind of background. So I don't think
Personally, I would feel that because the ADA compliance is going to cost a lot of money no matter what it does. I mean, there's no ADA person. There's no construction person. The bell.
All right. So are you suggesting we just kind of,
I would feel happier if we could come back and visit this another. I support doing it, but I would feel happier if we could come back and we'd all looked at maybe a draft that would include certain other things.
okay, that would be okay with me.
Yeah, I guess I'm ready to go with this, I guess, in the sense that I don't think there's any really good solution here that will cover all the bases. I could make up a list of 15 expertise areas that would be helpful, for example, to have on this. So, where do you draw the line? This in some ways is not perfect, and, you could, do a variety of other things that would be sort of equally effective in my view. But I think part of our job to actually make a decision and move forward with it. So I'm ready to support that. But again, I don't object, Marguerite, if others want to.
Well, I'd modify it then.
Take more look.
At least to put in 9 members as opposed to 7 include planning.
So, I'm not gonna, I don't want the committee at all, so that's why I'm not gonna weigh in on this very much, but, the 9, I mean, I just learned my lesson with select board, Sam was on it too. We could not keep any, we really had trouble, even getting, 6 to, and it's not just vacancies, it's just that I still think psychologically, when you've got 9 on committee, you take the pressure off members, they think, oh, there's enough people there, I don't have to go. Even when we had a lot of people that would miss meetings for years because they knew that there was going to be plenty of other people that went. So I still don't like the 9. I still think 7 is much more effective.
What if we lose the 2 at large or lose 1 at large and lose 1 within a half a mile?
What do you mean
And then you have
lose?
7 people. You have 7 people. You have 1 person within a half a mile and 1 person at large.
The concern I have
Planning.
is that, I said this at the meeting. We're gonna get the same cast of characters. And, I'm a character too, so I'm not being disruptive. And this was an opportunity, I think there were several people in the neighborhood that were actually excited about doing this and might want to actually participate in their local government. And
Yep.
If so I would shed committee members before I would shed
Neighbors.
at neighbors and at large. I think we need some fresh thinking about this building.
I'm sympathetic to planning far more than Shopsy on it, I guess. And I would be open to looking for a planning board member to apply for one of the at-large positions, for example, and getting a planning board involved that way.
The neighbors that came, the 2 meetings, clearly were interested in doing this, and they were clearly people who haven't done this before. So I wouldn't want to do anything to temper their enthusiasm for participating here. So
Yep.
that part I am,
And I think the 2 within the half-mile station there, I think those are, for me, appropriate and solid appointees. That picks up the folks in the room, basically. The other meetings.
But then how do you fit? I really feel like planning should be on.
should be on.
Should be part of the process.
Then I would take one of the at-large off and replace it with a planning.
And then, so Marguerite, but were there other changes to the substance of the charge that you wanted to propose?
No, if you want to move forward with it right away. I mean, I watched the meeting and I thought people had a lot of good ideas and I thought people who live in the neighborhood came up with really good ideas. I mean, I would like the perfect is the enemy of the done, right? So I'm fine with this as it is, but I really feel strongly that the planning should have a seat at the table if they want.
Yeah, and I'd be okay with one at-large swap for a planning board member.
Okay,
Comment.
would you like to speak?
Yes, please. Mimi Latrell, Chair of the Planning Board. Just to speak on the number on the committee. There seems to be pushback that 9 is too much. And I agree with the standing committee that it is, but I chaired the master plan committee, which was 13. And we managed to put together a master plan for $10,000 that we wrote ourselves instead of the $130,000 to $150,000 that other towns pay. So when you have a short-term goal, I think it's much easier for a large number of people to meet and get quorum to accomplish that goal.
But it took a long time though, right? It took a lot of time.
It took 3 years, which it took previously when they had the consultant and paid $80,000 for it.
But I would also argue, Ms. Latrell, that we had a hard time getting a quorum at a number of those meetings, as a matter of fact.
Once each year, we had a difficulty getting a quorum. So 3 times out of 3 years. And originally, the committee was 23.
Right, yeah. And we kept cutting back on members to make it easier, certainly, yeah. Yep, I mean, I understand the point. I still think 9 is too many myself.
And planning had asked to be on this as the elected board that is in charge of long-term planning in the town. We have made a request to the select board to be on the committee.
And
Sam, what-
I'm okay with 1 planning board and 1 at large.
Okay, how do other people
Al
feel?
suggested.
Fine.
And then Marguerite, were you suggesting you had other, changes to the the part of the document about charge, about things you also wanted to have considered about what this committee is looking at.
Well, oh, sorry. There was one line, for instance, in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines from the bottom. Said reports shall cover alternative uses that will enjoy broad community support. I'm just going to assume that that should be like go without saying. Because it'll have to be community supported. I mean, these were just like, for instance, the committee shall attempt to find alternative sources of funding for any proposed use. That means grants, right?
Not
Or
necessarily
Private
Then-
investment.
private investment.
Okay, then I would stipulate that we should attempt to find private investment for any.
So
I don't want to, I
don't
don't
wanna
think
tie
we,
it down.
I don't think we should be tying people's hands. This is,
All
we're
right.
supposed to be thinking outside the box and thinking broadly.
Or maybe
Uh,
other alternatives we can't.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know that we know what those are.
Yeah.
All right,
And then the broad community support, you know, I think I want this committee to be thinking about things they can actually get through town meeting. You know, think big, but also be practical about what you're thinking about.
all right. If you
You know.
think you need to say that, then fine. That's it. All
The
right.
group that's gonna control town meeting is the neighbors, you know?
Yep.
Rest of the town, won't be as interested. The neighbors will show up. And so if you don't have the plan that the majority of the neighbors want to do, then you're probably not gonna pass it.
Right, I agree. Now, okay, so others, I'm just nitpicking, all right. Charge number 3, if considered, a plan should be developed for the rehousing of the existing occupants. That's somewhat out of the bailiwick of this because the plan for a plan could be suggested for the rehousing, but I mean, it's sort of beyond the,
Well,
they would define where they're gonna put recreation and,
what I'm suggesting, Marguerite, is if there's some better language that you think would be better, do you
it's probably not
want to
worth
come
it.
back
Yeah.
at the next meeting with language you think would be appropriate?
Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll defer. If the majority of the group thinks that this language is okay standing and we move to 9 people, I'll vote for it.
I'm okay with deferring.
Yeah, I'm not ready to go to 9 people, I guess, so.
I'm be careful what you ask for. As you know, even the gods would punish first they grant.
Oh,
them.
no,
Just
we're not going to 9 people. We're using 7. We're
7.
substituting 1 at large for planning.
yes.
I'm okay with
That
that.
was Al's proposal, yeah.
All right, I'd be all right with that. And leaving the language the way it is.
And I think we will have an opportunity to listen in, talk to people and reinforce how this develops along the way.
Okay, so should we move this for the next meeting?
I don't think so.
Okay. You're prepared to vote?
I am.
Okay. What do you, what,
Kathy?
I'm going along with the majority here. I've just said it. I don't like the committee, so I'm just gonna go, whatever the majority wants, I'm going along with. So,
Well, I feel like we should enable the neighborhood in any way that we can to come up with any ideas that they can. And if this will do it and we get started right away, that's fine. with me. So,
Yeah, and I think again, moving forward with it is important because there's not a lot of time here.
all right,
agreed.
Sam, do you want to make a motion? Let's do it.
Yeah, I'll move that we approve the charge as proposed with following updates. 1, that we add the planning board to the list of committee members, and we change the at-large members from 2 to 1 at-large member.
Second,
That's it?
That's it for me. Is that
All right,
anything else?
so discussion, Al,
I'm good with that.
okay, Marguerite,
I'm good with that.
all right, so was there a second?
Marguerite seconded.
Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay,
Okay.
I
Off and running.
think that completes our regular agenda, and the last item is public comment. Seeing no public comment. We're now going to take a vote to enter into executive session without returning to open session. I move that the board enter into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, and not return to open session to consider a step 3 grievance from the police union.
Second.
Okay, it needs to be a roll call vote. Dennington, aye. Cook,
I,
Stivers.
Stivers, aye.
Landry, I.
Hamilton, I.
Okay,
Needs to lock the room.